Yes.
Told me that they fixed that mic.
Chris said they didn't.
Good evening and welcome to your City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017, and it is 7 p.m. Regular meetings are held on the first and third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Councilmember Susowitz,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Genoway,
Present.
and Mayor Minigar.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I would like to ask Pastor Chet Lowe of Coast Hills Church to come forward for the invocation, and then we will have Junior Girl Scout Troop 3208 to come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Writer of Hebrews said, "Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." And our Father, if there was ever a time of need in our nation, it is today. We come before you and we ask, Lord, that you would comfort the families that lost loved ones to a tragic incident only a couple of days ago. And as a city, as a region, and as a nation, we grieve with them. Father, we pray that as we move forward, that you would give us the wisdom and the insight and the ability to lead this city and to lead this region in a way that honors you. We also remember those in Houston, Naples, and the Keys, and even Puerto Rico. We pray that you would be the God of all comfort to them and for them. And Lord, I pray for this meeting, and I ask that you would give wisdom to the mayor and to the councilmen and ladies. And I humbly ask in Jesus' name that you would preside. Give them the ability to lead uprightly, to set an example, and to lead with integrity. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Audience attention. Color guard advance. Color guard present the colors. Would the Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and audience please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Audience may be seated.
At this juncture, I wanted to ask if there are any troop leaders in the audience to join us. And please introduce yourselves, first name only, and which school you go to. I start with you, the leader. I can hold it for you.
My name is Evie, and I go to Moulton Elementary School.
My name is Marissa, and I go to Moulton Elementary.
My name's Elisha, and I go to Moulton Elementary School.
My name's Gracie, and I go to Moulton Elementary School.
My name is Haley and I go to elementary school.
My name is Jennifer, and I don't go to Moulton Elementary School.
And my name is Brianna, and Jennifer and I and another woman, Brenna Breeden, run this troop.
Thank you very much. I guess as usual, we're gonna have a photo up right now. If you're ready, we're ready. Sure. Excuse me. Thank you very much. All right, our presentation this evening is proclamation declaring October 8th through 14th, 2017 as Fire Prevention Week. At this time, I would like to have our Fire Chief, Jeff Adams, to please come forward for the presentation. For the public record, I wanted to read all the 8 items, whereases that happen to be appearing on the proclamation. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk for fire, from fire, and whereas U.S. home fires resulted in 2,290 civilian deaths in 2016, representing the majority, which happens to be 78% of all U.S. fire deaths, and whereas newer homes are built with lightweight materials and burn obviously faster than older home construction, many of today's products and furnishings produce toxic gases and smoke when burned, making it impossible to see and breathe within moments, and whereas these conditions contribute to a much smaller window of time for people to escape a home from fire safety, with people having as little as 1 to 2 minutes to escape from the time the smoke alarm sounds, and whereas Orange County residents are responsive to public education and outreach measures and can take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes, whereas, this is number 6, whereas the 2017 Fire Prevention Week theme, every second counts, plan 2 ways out, effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and participating this action twice a year. And whereas a home fire escape plan includes 2 exits from every room in the home, a path to the outside from each exit, smoke alarms in all required locations, and a meeting place outside where everyone in the home will meet upon exiting. And whereas, this is the last one, home fire escape plans provide the skill set and know-how to quickly and safely escape a home fire situation to ensure that everyone in the household knows what to do in a real fire situation. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Fred Minigar, on behalf of Laguna Niguel City Council, do hereby declare October 8 through 14, 2017 as Fire Prevention Week, and urge Orange County residents to develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household, practice it twice a year, and participate in the many public safety activities, efforts of Orange County Fire Authority's fire and emergency services during Fire Prevention Week of 2017. As always, I appreciate, on behalf of the City Council, we do recognize what you do for all of us, and you know, we happen to be living in this beautiful paradise, and behind our homes we have great slopes with a lot of beautiful landscaping, and you can protect us and keep us safe. If you have any other comments from my colleagues, please use.
Thank you. I just want to say a few words. I happen to be a director in the OCFA, and a lot of you may not know, but our firemen and our firewomen do a lot more than just be here. They were out there in Texas and in Florida, and I think even some out in Puerto Rico as well. So we had the fires up north. We sent you up there. So they don't just stay down here. They're putting their lives at risk constantly, and they're out there. So I can't tell you how proud we are to have you representing us. So thank you.
Thank you. So it's very important. That was a mouthful of words right there, but it really does take 2 minutes to train and practice with your family and show them the 2 ways out of each room in the house should fire occur, and have a meeting place. Check your smoke detectors and know where each of your family members are. It takes 2 minutes to practice, and it's our hope that you take that time to do that practice and have accountability for everybody in the house if and when it should happen. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think this is the only presentation that we have tonight. Go back to the dais. All right, now we're getting to public communications. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is required to submit a completed gold-colored request to speak form, which happens to be right near the entrance, from the city clerk prior to being heard by the City Council. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. And I believe that, Madam Clerk, these are the only forms that we have received. Very good. All right, the first one is by Martha McNicholas, the Honorable McNicholas. Please come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Fred Minigar, council members. My name is Martha McNicholas. I come to you tonight as part of the Laguna Niguel Relay for Life of Laguna Niguel and Aliso Viejo. So I brought some other people with me. Come on up. Gail Paride was the co-chair of the event this year. Marilyn Amato is a longtime supporter. And we have Renee Daniels, who's our American Cancer Society representative. And we come to you tonight just to thank you for your ongoing support of the event and of the City Family Fights Back team. On behalf of Pam Lawrence, who couldn't be here tonight, she wanted to thank you all personally. I think we had a very successful event back in August. We went to a 6-hour model, which, other than having you guys have the sun in your eyes for the first half hour, other than that, I think it was a very successful event. We did not quite meet our financial goal, but we hope to, everything's going up and down these days, so we hope to do better next year. We had, I think, over 200 participants. We had over 25 survivors and made around $30,000. We're still, you have to pay some of those expenses too. So successful event. Thank you all for coming out and for supporting it. And again, we've applied for the community services grant and appreciate your support again. On behalf of our team and the American Cancer Society, we'd like to present you with a thank you award for your support. Can you come down and
inviting us back?
Yeah, can you come down and take a picture again? All of you, all of you. Yeah, is there anything else I missed? No, I think we got everything. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, the first speaker is Mr. Robert Ives.
Mayor Minigar and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. By way of introduction, my name is Robert Ives. I'm an attorney, 30 years a citizen of this city. I've raised 2 children here. I'm a business trial lawyer. The reason I'm speaking tonight, though, is to advocate the rights of thousands of people in this city who own dogs. Excuse me. I'm concerned because recently my wife was on one of the fields in the new city facilities where she was aggressively and loudly commanded to get off the fields because she had a dog. There have been signs being posted throughout the city now that say no dogs allowed in the sport field areas, and the citation is to Laguna Municipal Code Section 10-1-46. I researched that code section carefully. I came down to the City Hall, I spoke to the city clerk, I spoke to the Public Works Department. I asked to have Mr. Jerry Solom return my call. He did not do so. I contacted the city attorney. He graciously called me and has been very courteous to me and solicitous to my cause. The concern I have is that the code section cited doesn't say what the sign purports to prohibit. And specifically, the code section says that it has a promising title of dogs on public school property, parks, and public beaches. But all it says is that no person in charge of any dog except a blind person with a guide dog shall permit the dog under any circumstances within public school property, the park known as Upper Newport Bay, or any public beach. Now, there are several other statutes that I think address the health concerns of the city, and those have to do with leash laws, nuisance control, that sort of thing. But nothing prohibits us from taking our dog on an evening walk across the parks of our city. And I've been doing that 30 years. I find no legal support for it. I'm very concerned about it. It brought my wife to tears when she was yelled at from across the park, and it's happened on 2 occasions, and I've talked personally to 3 or 4 other citizens who have expressed the same concern about the aggressive manner in which this is being enforced. But most of all, I want those signs taken down because I think they are illegal and they unfairly exclude our citizens from our own parks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ives. Your points are well taken. On behalf of the City Council, I appreciate for bringing it to our attention. As you know, but as an attorney, as you know that we have specific protocols, no decision shall be made during this meeting at this juncture on that item, but I would be more than happy to ask our esteemed city attorney, Mr. Dixon, if you would like to elaborate now or later, you can get back to Mr. Ives to resolve that. And obviously, we want to see clarification. All of us, we wanted to make sure that any sign that has been posted is in compliance and conformance of our municipal code or other codes that would be applicable. So thank you very much for bringing it to us. Mr. City Attorney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Minigar, members of the council. I did have a couple of conversations with Mr. Ives. I thought they were productive conversations. The code section that he cited is simply the wrong code section. It's a code section that pertains to an ordinance that we inherited from the county. It's been on the top of my list of sections to update or repeal. The second question, though, that is a little more relevant, our ordinance does require leashes in public parks. You can't let dogs run in the open. Our ordinances prohibit damage to fields, and that has been important relative to the artificial turf fields and the use of those fields. But there is a little bit of a clarification that I think needs to be done. Whether or not to prohibit dogs from being on sports fields entirely or the areas around sports fields. So I would think that this is something that the Parks and Rec Commission may want to take a look at to give us some advice as to how extensive the prohibition should be. For instance, I don't see any problem whatsoever with somebody having a dog that's on a leash in a sports area watching a game. On the other hand, you don't want to have a dog off the leash in a sports area on an artificial turf. So My recommendation to the council would be to take a look at the issues raised by Mr. Ives, have staff take a look at them, and present them to the Parks and Rec Commission for review and recommendation.
Very good. I do concur with your assessments. Any of my colleagues wanted to chime in? Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I would concur with that. I think the Parks and Recreation Commission is the appropriate place to start. And I know they have reviewed something similar in the past, but I think that's the appropriate place. And because there are residents on that committee, we'll have some good input, and then they can make a recommendation to us.
For the record, Mayor, I wanted to make it clear that my position, and I think I speak for most people, is that the artificial turf should definitely be off limits to dogs, whether on the leash or off the leash. There are reasons for, health reasons why that's not going to decompose and so forth, and exposes our children and our young people to unnecessary danger. Everything else, if there's not a game in progress, there's no reason in my mind why as long as the dog is on a leash and properly controlled, we can't walk them across the fields, the sports fields. I think if that is taken away, that would be transgression that faults our citizens. So that's my position. But I'm happy to confer, and like I said, Mr.
Very
Dixon
good. As
has
our
been
city
very
attorney
nice.
mentioned, it's going to go to Parks and Rec Commission for discussions, and ultimately, any decision that they would be making is going to come back to the city council for the final ratification. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. The next speaker is Mr. George Ferguson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us tonight. Thank you for your service to our city. My name is George Ferguson. I reside in Laguna Niguel. I've been here for 20 years. I've lived in Southern California all my life. Congratulations, Chief Adams, for your well-deserved award for public safety. And as the amount of time and effort that have been put in to the things that are self-evident in the award that was given to Chief Adams, there is another issue that is in front of you that you have not paid as close attention to, and that is the issue of congregate living. I was at the last meeting on September 19th. I heard you mention it. I heard you mention that there's nothing you can do. As much effort as you put into the clear and present danger of clearing the way around your house of threats, I ask that you look at the issue of congregate living with the same amount of detail. There is something you can do every day. Every colleague you speak to, you should mention the issue of congregate living and the issue that it is in Laguna Niguel. Every phone call you have with one of your colleagues, you should mention the issue of congregate living and the effects that it has on Laguna Niguel. Every time you speak with a state or federal representative, including, I heard today, that our Senator Dianne Feinstein is not even aware of the issue of congregate living, nationally, let alone in Laguna Niguel. You should mention the issue of congregate living in Laguna Niguel. It is something that you can do every day. It is something that should be as clear and present as the brush that is around our house that we should clear for the safety, and I heard so many times today, of our children and of our homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just a quick. I totally concur with your statement. It's a hot topic between myself and my wife. Let's start from my home.
I feel sorry for you, sir. You're going to lose.
Every night we talk about that. We are in agreement with you. Our Senator Pat Bates, our Assemblyman Bill Breaux, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, Congressman Darrell Issa, all of us are on the same page. All of us are trying to come up with a program, a plan that it has to trickle down, as you obviously know, because the laws of California and the federal. As soon as it's materialized, we as a municipal corporation, like a lot of other cities in Orange County, 34 cities in Orange County, and 484 cities in the great state of California, we're going to just either concur with those or we're going to take a different route. My colleague, Councilwoman Lori Davies.
Please take a seat. I appreciate it.
Well, I had another thing to say, if you don't mind.
As long as
Did I
it's
run out
within
of
your
time?
3 minutes, please.
Does anyone else from Laguna Niguel wish to yield their time to me? Thank you very much. May I please proceed?
Absolutely, please.
You're playing the long game. We very much appreciate the fact that you're playing the long game. However, in El Niguel Heights, we're on the 10-yard line. We're playing the 10-yard defense. Things are happening very quickly. We support everything that you're doing, but right now, it's in our backyard. So we need to do something immediately. We need your support for the long game, and we appreciate it very much, and we'll be there to support you as soon as we finish our defense on the 10-yard line. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Mr. Ferguson. At the last meeting, I did say I would get back to you, and we had an opportunity to speak. I was up in D.C. For the last 5 days, and we went up with the ACCOC, which is a lobbyist group that represents Orange County. And we went up there for 3 topics: sober living homes, drones, and homeless. And we made a point to speak to HUD. And again, it was very insightful but frustrating. They had never heard of sober living homes. We spoke to Pelosi staff, Feinstein staff. Again, never heard of sober living homes. And so, as frustrating it was one of those things that I thought, you know what, at least we're up there and we're getting we're getting out there and we're educating. They need to be educated. So we may be going back in December as well. Also, I was very proud. We have a task force that we put together, and Senator Feinstein yesterday joined our coalition. And she has quite a bit of pull up there. But this is a nonpartisan issue. And the main thing is that we have to go national. So we're working with Florida, Connecticut, Arizona. It's hitting a lot of other states. We're getting out there. And we also spoke to Congressman Issa, who has HR 472. And again, when you have your sober living homes that are under 6 people, they don't have to be licensed. And I know that's why a lot of times we don't know if there's a home there. You don't know if there's a home there until somebody, neighbors such as yourself, says, hey, we've got a home coming in. If it doesn't have to be licensed, we don't have that information. So we do appreciate you coming to us, because then we have that information. Also, we do have our nuisance laws, and that's one thing we can do. And I know I spoke to the chief. When you see something or a nuisance happening, we need you to call the police, because if we can sit there and we can note that this is going on, we can actually do code enforcement as if it's a regular residential home. So we do count on you, and I know that you've all gotten together, and I tell you, I'm really proud to see your community doing this. We also need your letters and your calls and your emails to all of our Congress and senators as well, because believe it or not, they're busy up there, so they'll talk to their staffers and say, well, we've got this issue. Have you heard anything? If they don't hear anything, usually they're not going to do anything, but you've got a strong voice. Do the same as well. But do know that we are working hard. We have another bill through ACCOC up in Sacramento, AB 572. Something you don't know about is we have inspectors. The sad part is there's 16 inspectors that are supposed to come and inspect these homes. All the inspectors live in Sacramento, which means they don't come down here. So this would be a pilot program, but we're trying to push it where the counties and the cities would actually pay to have an inspector in Orange County, so they could come down here, inspect these homes, code enforce them. So please, we would love to have your support. Again, it's AB 572. It's the Quirk Silva bill. Please go ahead, call, email. We really need your support on that. It was doing great. It went right through Assembly, and then it got stuck in another area, but it's a 2-year bill, and it's going to be looked at in January. So we've got a few months that we're really going to try to push that as well. So we're looking at the legislation. If there's things that you think we can do, we're open here. But do know that we're fighting for it, and this is a safety for all citizens, all residents, whether they're in the homes or they're in the neighborhoods. So we do care. I appreciate your effort. We're there to support you, and I really appreciate you listening.
Any other comments?
I would just like to add, in reference to AB 572, which Councilwoman Davies just referred to, we know how our legislators feel, and they're working for us. But what we need the residents to do is to contact everyone you know who live in other parts of the state, in other state senate and other assembly districts, to put pressure on their senators and their assembly members to support these bills that we're trying to have go through here in Orange County. It just can't be the Orange County delegation that is supporting these. We need support from throughout California. So that's where it's up to our residents to take a grassroots approach and contact everyone that you know who live throughout the state. And then on issues like Congressman Issa's HR 472, people who live in other states, because other state congressmen and state senators, they have one vote just like ours do. So we need to be really mobilizing and working on contacting people who live in other areas who aren't aware of this issue. I know when I spoke to Councilwoman Davies after her trip, it was shocking to us that other state senators were not aware of this issue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. Robert Casella. Welcome.
I want to ask you about this parking lot behind the community center there, under our houses in the back. We back up to this particular space. And I saw that on the zoning map, it said open space, and I know Ms. Giglio sent me an email saying that it wasn't open space. Zoned as open space, and I didn't, the map shows that it is. I just want to know if it is or it isn't.
I had also mentioned we were going to be following up with just to make sure, but that parcel of land was given to us to proceed with the project. So it's not open space in standards of, right. But we were going to check in with community development and do our research on that as part of the process. Thank you.
And the other, with the senior projects report put out by the city, states that the reason for even proposing this parking lot is that there are over 200 visitors a day. And I don't know who counted 200 visitors a day. I can see the Yosemite Park, Yosemite Street from the back of my house. And I've been observing that street ever since I heard about this parking lot. And there's always open spaces there. Occasionally, I do see cars. I'll drive around and I can still see open spaces on Yosemite and even beyond Big Bend. So I take issue with that. And even if there are 200 visitors, they're probably intermittent. And I don't know who's counting because you don't sign in when you go in there. Also, you're saying you're getting numerous calls. People, I don't know how many numerous is. But if you're getting 100 calls or 20 calls, if you're getting 100 calls and you make space for 20 more visitors, you're still going to get numerous calls. So it doesn't logically make sense to me that you should be supplying 20 people or 20 visitors when you have many numerous calls, as you state here. And I don't know what that number is or who's documenting that and where they're coming from. So I think we can clarify this. And by the way, I got an email suggesting that this was on hold. Does anybody confirm that?
Oh, at this juncture, I wanted to ask our Public Works Director, Mr. Nasser Abuzadeh, to elaborate on that with regard to the public meetings too and the forums. So the floor is yours.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Council members, we have put a stop to the project. It's on hold for now, and we will continue to meet with the community members to flesh out the issues. I believe that some of the concerns that have been raised, we can address those through design, and we'll continue the dialogue with the community to make sure that we have a project that will be well received by the community. So the dialogue will continue, but the project is on hold for now.
And I wanted to make sure before you proceed to the next step with regard to the design, procurement, and then, asking for bids, that everyone within the sphere of the influence of the proposed parking lot would be notified so that you can attend the public meeting, you can look at the plans, you can look at all the sketches. You can look at everything. You can question the
Right.
engineers and the whole staff with that
Okay.
regard before moving forward.
No, I understand. Considering what you just said about looking at the plans, because you paid $122,000, I don't know if you spent that money yet for an architect to design 3
Well,
alternative
because
plans.
it's more than that. It has a lot of
Well,
different
that's what it
components.
states in the senior project here. That's what
Correct,
I'm just stating what I'm reading.
Sure.
Okay. If you spent more than that, I don't know. But my question is, can you allocate some funds to spend to an architect, to give to an architect to maybe design the existing parking lot, expand that? Because there are spaces in the back that could be expanded. And you have a 15-foot at least walkway between the 2 parking areas. That could be taken out a lot
As
easier.
you know, this is not the right forum to discuss about dimensions. That's why I'm suggesting that, and I'm pretty sure the city staff and our assistant city manager, they have specific plans to have these public meetings so that you're going to be discussing those. You can always brainstorm them. We welcome your suggestions. You live there, so you have more knowledge about the area than any of us. So with that said, we appreciate your comments and your inputs.
Okay, and it was a environmental impact report completed yet?
I'm not sure. I can ask our engineering manager.
No, there's, we're still at the concept level, and we have not developed the environmental clearance document yet. But as the mayor mentioned, we will be discussing these issues with the community members.
Yeah, the environmental impact report has a criteria of what to consider. One of them is housing, which is affecting more than 20 visitors along that whole backyard way. There's about 11 homes, and I know there's more than 20 occupants. And also the market value of our homes. When I bought my home in December of 1979, I paid a premium because there was no house behind me, and there was a slope and a hillside. And that was about 10%. And if you look at 10% today of an average $700,000 home, we're gonna lose 70,000. So, I question anybody who would be in that position to be affected directly would be standing here as well, as you would be if you were living in the same house.
That's your time.
So,
Well, thank you very much for your comments.
okay.
They're all are well taken. Councilmember Jerry Schlusowitz?
Yeah, good. Just a quick question, because I know that always was zoned open space. Have we rezoned it yet? Because that was his first question.
City is not subject to zoning laws, and I would defer to Mr.
City
Terry
attorney, that's
Dixon.
what I thought would have it as well. Because I know that we at some point in time, we went through all the open space parcels, et cetera. Have we rezoned that yet, sir?
No, I don't believe we've changed the zoning, but as Public Works Director said, the zoning really isn't applicable to the city uses.
Okay.
But ultimately, it will, of course, be within the discretion of this council
Right.
whether or not to allow that as a use.
Okay, but just to answer his question, the answer is no, we have not rezoned it yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Jeff Collinson.
I'm Jeff Collison. I'm a resident of Lake Park since 2008. I attended the meeting September 18th that was held for the homeowners at the senior center. At that meeting, I heard enough evidence presented by the various homeowners that educated me. There was enough evidence presented at that meeting to kill this planned parking spot. When I came here, the council meeting the following day, I saw the concerned looks on faces and the awe, and I finally said, well, you guys got the message. That's not the right place. But what I'm hearing since that time doesn't tell me you got that message. The people at the meeting at the senior center said they're going to bring you the information. I don't think it was fully presented to you, the animosity about this project from the homeowners. Because if it was, this project would be dead. It wouldn't be there anymore. At that same meeting, there were so many recommendations to fulfill the need of adequate parking without using this little place that doesn't meet the need of the so-called 200 people parking. It doesn't meet that need. It's a drop in the bucket from what we're hearing. There's no reason not to just kill this project, and that's what's on your website, which I'm glad you put up to keep us informed. But this project deserves to be killed on the spot, and let's devote our time to an alternative. And if you need ideas, come back to the homeowners. They presented so many valid information that night to provide adequate parking, not just for 20 cars, but a lot more people. And not just for 2 months or 2 years, but for probably several years to come. The last council meeting, I sat next to a lady, and she's been, I guess, after the council. She's got a parking project for several hundred cars on a project she's got, and her cost, she told me, if I remember, it was $528 per car. And we're going to be spending $17,000 to $20,000 per car for not 20 spaces. When you take out the entry and exit, it's going to be more like 17 to 20,000. Does not make sense when money's so tight. Give it to this other lady for her parking garage. She needs $526 per car. Thank you. And I don't need a photograph.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Julie Millard.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Julie Millard. I have lived with my husband Fred in our home in El Niguel Heights for 34 years. I would like you to think for a few minutes about the proposed state license recovery facility on Olympic Place, how this facility will affect our lives, as well as other families on Olympic Place and El Niguel Heights and in our city of Laguna Niguel. During these 34 years, we have raised 2 children and now assist with our grandchildren. We volunteered in our children's schools, in our churches, and community organizations. We have worked hard for the safety and comfort of our home. We thought we had done all the right things. The city of Laguna Niguel is currently seeing a major influx of treatment facilities coming into residential neighborhoods. California state legislature needs to close existing loopholes that allows drug rehabilitation businesses to operate independently of local zoning ordinances. The laws that have been passed allow state licensed facilities to operate their business in the middle of our lovely communities, destroying decades of joy that we have established in our homes. Please let me share a few of our thoughts and fears. How will this facility affect the impact the lives and values of the properties on Olympic Place and the surrounding communities? We fear for the quality of our life, the privacy of our home, and enjoyment of our backyard, causing us emotional distress. We fear not only for our safety, but also for the safety of our grandchildren and other families in El Niguel Heights. We are deeply concerned about excessive secondhand smoke adversely affecting our health. We are concerned about noise, parking, traffic, and how this will affect Olympic Place cul-de-sac with parking already impacted. Please let me pose this question to each one of you. How would you feel and what would you do if this facility decided to be your next door neighbor? This proposed facility is my next door neighbor. Let me ask you, how can this happen? No, it's okay. This is my next door neighbor. This is all I have. And I ask you to please do something to help all of our communities. Thank you very much.
Ms. Barbara Foster.
I'm Barbara Foster. I have a totally different topic for you. I do live in Laguna Niguel, and I want to thank the mayor and all the council members for your service. It's fantastic what you do. I also want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway. She is supporting our Arts Laguna Niguel committee, and we're working together to build a concentrated effort for arts in our community. All the things I've heard tonight, we are a fabulous community, and what we want to do is build the arts. Our mission statement is to encourage the arts in all its forms to the citizens of Laguna Niguel. We want to create an engagement in the arts in all its forms, theater, music, visual arts, all of its forms, to bring our community together under the umbrella of arts. We do have a website, artslagunaniguel.com. We're working on developing it. We're working on fundraising and doing some other activities. So anybody within the sound of my voice that supports the arts, please reach out to Mayor Pro Tem Genoway, and she will get your name and contact to me, because we're looking for all the people who are supporting the arts. And I really appreciate the opportunity to bring arts to our community. It's a fabulous community. And if I can change channels real quickly, I want to say I have a personal experience. I had 5 foster children and 2 children in my home when a fire hit. My son's electric blanket caught on fire. And before he woke up, the curtains caught on fire and the dresser caught on fire. And because we had practiced fire alarm, all 7 children got out. So please heed his words. Do a fire alarm rehearsal in your home, because it does pay off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Steve Perlman.
Good evening. I also am a resident of El Niguel Heights, and I can't say anything really to add to what our previous members have said. But I was here a couple of weeks ago, and Councilwoman Davies, I asked you about Washington, and I want to thank you, because I came here today to see what the response was, what the trip was about. And it was good to hear that while it's going to be a long-term process, it has started, and we're going to start getting the attention that it deserves. So I want to thank you for that. And Mayor Pro Tem, I agree with you. It's not just up to you to, solve this. It's going to take all of us, and it's going to need to be a nationwide project. I've spoken to people, just friends I have in other areas, and it's amazing how big a problem this is really turning into. Mayor, I don't know if, you mentioned 400 or so different municipalities. Is there a mayor's club, where you speak to your 400 other mayors and you start getting them on board? I think it has to be a grassroots effort from all sides.
I do have 2 colleagues, Councilwoman Lori Davis,
right,
that she's very active with the ACCOC, Association of California Cities Orange County, and the League of California Cities. She's the president of Orange County. She's very active. She does talk, communicate with other mayors, council members, all the decision makers in the great state of California. We have a very solid position in that regard, and I don't recall that if any cities are advocating for more of these facilities to be there. And to my left, our Mayor Pro Tem, she's very active in all these activities, and she does spearhead a lot of these public forums discussions in that regard. So we as a city, just short to the point, we are on the top of it locally, but we are constrained, as you well know, by the laws of the state of California. So we have to be very careful in what we do and how we act with regard to those facilities. Our chief, police chief, Chief Barr, our police department, they are very cognizant to any abnormality, anything that happens to be out of the norm, that they would be bothering, disturbing. Any bad behaviors would not be tolerated by this city and by our police department. So therefore, we are on the top of that. They are, I hate to use the word, they are under surveillance, those facilities, because our city staff does take notes. Anytime a gentleman like you shows up at the council meeting and you give us the address, they take notes. We have internal maps so we know where those facilities are. There is one not far from my home, and I've talked to all my own neighbors to watch that house, to look at who comes in, who leaves. The minute that they do something that as a citizen they're not allowed to do, I'll be the first one to call our police chief to get there. So we are doing everything that we can as a city. This is a first-class city. I'm with you. That's why we are different. And socioeconomically, demographically, we have a different standing, and we cannot tolerate any of those issues or activities that we don't want to see in our neighborhood. So your points are well taken, and I want to pass the floor to my colleague, Councilwoman Laurie Davies.
And I really appreciate it. On your point, this is a big issue in Orange County, so all the mayors are on this. Most of them already joined the coalition for sober living, which is great. It's a task force, but we're also working with the League of Cities nationwide.
Good.
And so we have speakers going out there to different cities and actually educating the different cities, the different electeds in regards to this problem. So we're trying to do as much education as we can, and then let them know, and for me, again, when we were up there, one thing we're going to hit is really the healthcare. And that's, if you follow the money, if you cut the money off, it cuts these homes off. And again, there are good facilities out there. We have to remember they've been out there for some time, but there's also a lot of bad players. And when you have affordable health care, everyone is entitled to 30 days of paid rehabilitation. What we're trying to do, though, if they're going to be changing this health plan, is to take that off the table, that you have to have supervision, there's guidelines you have to have, and I truly believe if you cut the money off,
Yep.
you're going to cut these facilities off.
Sure.
So that's another place that we're looking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mr. or Mrs. Gregg? I'm not sure. Okay, here we go. Mr. Gregg. Welcome.
I really have nothing to add that hasn't already been said. Thank you all for your service and your time. It's greatly admired. I want to publicly compliment the Association of El Niguel Heights, Sean and George, and there's probably a few more Georges in there, but I always lose track. But there are no other Bills. I've never seen, we moved here over 30 years ago in El Niguel Heights. Our kids were raised here, and I also got to meet some young families with newborn kids, and I want them to have the same privileges they've had. We moved here before Laguna Niguel was a city. We became a city because of the foresight and the courage of some city founders and the original city manager. And my encouragement to you all is to follow their leadership and being trailblazers rather than followers. I greatly appreciate going to Washington, D.C., but I've been there. I know what it's like. You can't go to a dysfunctional place and try to get answers. So my encouragement is to think out of the box, follow the leaders that founded this great city, and do something courageous to make this and keep this a great city for all those young families that are following us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And the last speaker of tonight, Mr. Sean Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. Again, my name is Sean Lehman. My wife and I have lived in Laguna Niguel for the past 3.5 years. Councilman Davies, I appreciate what you're saying and your follow-up and going to Washington, D.C. to try to fight this. Forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical. It's just kind of my nature, I guess. But I want to know just how closely people are paying attention to in our council to developments that are going on with this. Are you guys following what's going on in Costa Mesa? How about San Clemente? Because there was news that came out of San Clemente, some big wins for them just last month. That seems like there are things. Is anybody familiar with what's going on in San Clemente?
That win, too, was really within their HOA. that they had the lawsuit with. And so every city's different. I am. And
Are
also
you
I'm
talking Costa Mesa or San Clemente?
San Clemente and also Costa Mesa. They have been working with the different companies to, get down the amount they have and kind of negotiating deals there as well. So, and we are aware of it, and we talk about that. Every city, though, does have a different thing. Dana Point had an issue that came up, and they were able to take care of one unit. However, each one is kind of is defined differently. So it's not like we're saying we can't do anything here. What we're doing is we're actually looking at the different homes that we have and see if they're breaking any rule here, whatever we can possibly do. But it's almost like one at a time. So we are looking at them individually.
Yeah, what I'm
And if
talking
we're
about
trying to
though is
learn it,
maybe taking a broader stance. So just looking at some recent things in the register, Sovereign Healthcare, which is an operator, was suing San Clemente. San Clemente was countersuing Sovereign Health. And last month, from what I see here in the register, the city's ordinances regulating short-term residences and counseling service zoning remain in effect, which is considered a win for the city in trying to regulate these. What have you been doing, or what has Laguna Niguel been doing to try to replicate these types of things that have been successful in neighboring communities? And how quickly can we look at doing them if we haven't been?
Mr. City Attorney Terry Dixon.
Yes, Mayor Minigar. Actually, we've been working very carefully and very closely with all the different cities involved. Newport Beach, which has had many issues, maybe they were the first ones to start getting publicity. We've talked to their staff. We've looked at the lawsuits that they've been involved with. We've looked at their ordinances. Costa Mesa, which is a very significant area because there's been a lot of litigation, although nothing conclusive, but there has been an agreement, at least maybe a working agreement, between the operators of some of the facilities and the city to allow for a regulatory system that's now in place and seems to be functioning. San Clemente, we've spent a lot of time looking at that. We looked at the lawsuit. I forget what area the city was involved, but you actually had a homeowner sue for nuisance against a sober living facility, and the city joined in that. Ultimately, as I understand it, and as referred to by this gentleman, there was a settlement that each side ended up incurring their own attorney's fees, but it left the San Clemente regulatory ordinance in place. We've looked at San Juan Capistrano, which has done some things, Dana Point, Aliso Viejo. We, of course, have a moratorium here. That moratorium pertains to sober living facilities, and we've been enforcing that.
Those are just unlicensed, aren't they, sir?
That's absolutely correct. We have no ability to, nor does San Clemente or Dana Point or Newport Beach or anyone else, to prohibit state licensed facilities.
I think Sovereign Health operates state licensed facilities.
That's correct. They do in some situations they do, in other situations they don't.
I guess what I'm asking, and I think a lot of the other residents are echoing, is to, in a little more detail, other than we've looked at this or we've looked at that, help explain to us exactly what we're doing. Let us know that we've looked at these counseling service zoning options, and yes, it's something we can possibly change, or no, it's not going to apply to us, because it feels to some of us like we get some very generic answers to things, but nothing I think that satisfies our quest for really knowing what's going on.
Well, that's a very good point. Unfortunately, so far, nobody has made anything work against a state licensed facility. What we've done is we've monitored them. We ask that if you have problems at one of those, let us know, let the police know. We have filed complaints with the state. That doesn't necessarily get you anything. The main thing that I think you can do on the state licensed treatment facilities is monitor them. If, in fact, you have a strong homeowners association, you may be able to convince the owners to not allow their property to be used for a treatment facility. But I don't think anyone so far has got a panacea on treatment facilities. The best we've done so far is to curtail the sober living facilities, and we're looking at a regulatory ordinance like Costa Mesa has to implement in Laguna Niguel to impose some regulations, trying to limit the number of residents, trying to put in buffer requirements. Of course, we're looking at all the state and federal legislation, as you've heard. And anyone's got any other ideas, let us know. Give me a call tomorrow.
Okay, we will. And one last question, and I'll leave. But what I'd like is a pledge from the council members and a promise from Chief Barr that if these facilities generate nuisances, as I'm sure they're likely to do, that we'll get swift and very effective enforcement of those complaints as
Absolutely.
they're put in.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. All right, the public communications are closed now. We will now move on to our consent calendar, items 1 through 10. Are there any items that need to be pulled by my colleagues for comments or discussions?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I need to thank and excuse myself on item number 10, which relates to the rejection of the bid project in part on Bluebell Drive. I live at the intersection of Bluebell Drive and another street, and that's too close, so I need to recuse myself on number 10.
Very good. Any other items?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Mr.
Please.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I want to pull items 4 and 6, please.
4 and 6. Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway, any items? Very good. So do I have a motion to approve as the remaining items as recommended?
I'll make a motion to move the remaining.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved unanimously. All right, we're getting to item number 4. Councilmember Jerry Schlusowitz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm concerned about the fact that the September 5th minutes were not accurate, and I brought that up last meeting. And I appreciate the fact that City Attorney Dixon acknowledged my concerns and basically mentioned that they have merit. So I thank you. These are official records. They're government documents. These are very, very serious documents. They're the official records of this body. It must accurately reflect what was said and goes on at our meetings. And I ask council and staff to redouble their efforts to make sure these minutes are accurate and are not drafted with an eye towards achieving some other objective. So here we are again with minutes, and the part where I pulled the minutes basically contained the words of the minutes that never existed on September 5th. You know, these cannot contain made-up words that never existed. This is a very, very serious accusation. And again, these are legal government documents. So I want this item, again, pulled and brought back at the next meeting. And words that never existed on September 5th cannot be referred to on September 19th, to restate them in some other way. It falsifies the document. And that is a major problem for us as a council. So hopefully we can do that. The second part about this is Mayor Minigar on page 8 of 12 stated that, you know, whatever we do is with transparency, integrity, and the utmost respect. And again, I agree with him on that, especially with concerns to the residents in our body. And again, that relates to the minutes as well and contract spending. So I appreciate the mayor saying that at that point. And then the final part about these minutes is I would like under item number 2 on page 12 of the minutes, where it says city staff report on various events for the activities department. I'd like to note that City Attorney Dixon did pass and did not provide any report on anything at the September 19th meeting. And again, the reason I want that included is that goes back to the minutes of September 5th, where Mayor Dixon was going to make a report on the September 19th meeting regarding the negotiations with me on settlement. And so the fact that he didn't make that is, again, another of a number of series of Brown Act violations. I just want that noted. But again, with that, what I would like is these minutes to be tabled for the next meeting because they are not accurate, and I don't think this body wants to, pass on, unclear or uncorrect minutes, which are government documents. So that's my motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, and if you could, I didn't hear in your first instance you point out where in the minutes we were looking at.
It's in item 3 on page 5 of 12.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to take a look at it, and I didn't
Yeah,
hear that
okay,
before.
no problem, sir. Again, it contains words that were never said in September 5th, so they shouldn't be documented from September 19th here on October 3rd. We got to just remove made-up words. You can't make up words in the minute. You can't make up words. We have videotape of everything that gets said, and I know that we are using a summary of minutes, but when you summarize minutes, you can't quote somebody and make words up that were not spoken. Again, if you look at that, that is basically it's illegal. It's like forging a passport. So I'm just asking that we fix it. That's all I'm asking, and that we do a better job.
Which words? I'm on your paragraph now, but
Well,
I'm not
again, if I say it now, then they'll probably repeat it. Basically, I just don't want them repeated again, so I'm just going to leave it. It's in the second paragraph.
But I guess did you say the words and ask that
I
they
didn't
not
say-
be in,
okay.
that they not be in the minutes?
Okay, here, I'll make it real clear then. Mr. Dixon, do you want me to do this right now, or do you want to advise the council in some other way? It's your choice, sir.
Councilmember Sluswitz, I have no problem with you going ahead with your comments.
All right, well, Mr. Mahoney of West Coast Arborist never said typically we don't do residential work on September 5th. That it's made up, that's untrue, it's not in the video, he never said it. Those should have not been in today's meeting, they should not be in the September 5th meeting, they should not be in the September 19th meeting, and words that he says at a September 5th meeting cannot be included in the minutes. It misleads the public in terms of what was actually going on, because I asked him a direct question and that was never answered in there. So you can't have it in there. And there was 3 other items in there in that September 19th meeting, I'm sorry, the September 5th meeting, that's why they're not back yet, that were also falsified, is my accusation. Mr. Dixon has agreed with me, he acknowledged it tonight that he agrees with me that there's some merit to my claim, and you cannot falsify government documents. It's a very serious claim.
Yeah, to be clear, I wouldn't use the term falsification. I certainly would use the term.
Well, that's not what you said, but I'm saying that.
Okay, I'm just saying that I wouldn't characterize it that way. I will say that there's additions that were made that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, you can't quote somebody and quote them on something that didn't get said.
That's correct.
Again, I didn't want to go there. I've
absolutely
been
correct.
pressed by both you, Mr. Dixon, and my colleagues. I just was hoping that we'd table the item and get it fixed. I was trying to have it just quietly go on.
My colleague, Councilmember Jerry Schlusowitz, the word falsifying is a very, very strong negative word.
Correct. I didn't want to go there.
Okay, I want to put it to rest. By you accusing anyone that they falsified the minutes of the meeting, quite frankly, I totally disagree with you respectfully, but for the sake of, I mean, hey, we are very transparent. I'm going to ask Madam City Clerk to listen to the tape and just to put those words that you have specifically and explicitly used in that portion of the paragraph.
Yeah, but Mr. Bidegar, I mean, again, Mr. Mayor, and my colleagues, again, I was trying to be really nice and just move on, but you guys wanted to press. I tried to ask Mr. Dixon to step in, and he wanted me to press. But I am going to go clarify something. When you have a video of it, and you have exactly what somebody says, and you have words that, it's not like, it's sunny outside, and then you quote, it's not sunny outside. When you make up complete sentences, and you have a video, Mr. Bidegar, as you stated, and there's words in there that are included, sentences, complete sentences, that is a falsification of a document, and that is a serious claim, and I will stand by that, because you can't tell me that it's not false to make up words and add them to minutes. It's certainly not true, so I'm going to stand by it, but I'm hoping that we'll just table this, let's get it fixed, and then what I asked really is that we redouble our efforts as a council and as a staff to just make sure the truth gets said when we report what got said at a certain meeting. And then we could just all move on.
Your points are well taken. I mean, sometimes in paraphrasing statements, it may happen, but.
This wasn't a paraphrase, sir. This
I mean,
was a
I don't want to
quote.
go through.
All right, well then
tug
what
of
is,
war on
Mr.
the-
Mayor, then what is it? When words are made up, sentences are made up that weren't said, and you have video evidence, then what is it if it's
Well,
not
on behalf of
falsification?
my colleague.
I'm asking you a question,
Okay,
sir.
on behalf of this great city, I get personal offense to the statement that you made that it was falsified. or
Okay,
somebody
explain it
was
to me. Use the
cooking-
other word and I'll agree with you. What's
Well-
the other word when you make up words that aren't there? Tell me what that is, and I'll be happy to agree with you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I say something since they are
Please,
my minutes?
please.
I think there's a difference between falsification and a mistake. Minutes are reflected to the best of our ability. I am handling the minutes right now. They are usually the deputy's responsibility, which I haven't had a deputy in almost 6 months now. And I've been doing the best I can to reflect accurately as possible. There was a mistake in the minutes. I admit that. I'm not trying to hide anything or falsify anything. I try and put as much as possible. As a matter of fact, these are very minutes, doing as much verbatim as possible on certain subjects to make the subject matter clear is difficult sometimes. So verbatim sometimes is easier, but even with verbatim, there are certain words, we don't want to put slang in there. We don't want to put certain things. And so I know exactly what Councilmember Suswitz is speaking about. On here, the page 5 that he's referring to, I put exactly what he said, how he wanted the September 5th minutes changed. So I'm working on those minutes, and I will have them at the next council meeting. But we had several other items that we were working on. Those minutes, there were several revisions to those minutes, and I do apologize for those final minutes. But like I said, they were mistakes, not falsifications, any intention on making anything other than reflecting what accurately happens at the council meetings.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And for the record, I've been serving this great city for over 21 years. It's been the tradition, if you will, that we never use verbatim for any minutes of any of our meetings, as you well know. So I don't want to, again, I don't want to
Mr. Mayor,
start a
if
new
it says
discussion.
something that it wasn't intended to say, then it's not correct. And all I wanted to really
Okay,
do was
so they're
table
gonna
this
rectify
and
it.
move it on.
Very
That's
good.
it.
Very
If
good.
you hadn't pressed,
Any
we wouldn't have gotten into
discussions?
this discussion.
They're gonna
So it's a
rectify.
motion.
and-
I suggest we table it and then look at it when they come back to us.
I made the motions. Is that a second? I take it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item number 4 is approved. Then item number 6.
Thank you. And again, on this one here, I actually think that this is actually a compliment here to city staff, and I like what they've done here. So I only pulled it to point out what they've done, and that I think that this is just an excellent kind of model going forward. I know that we put this towards the Investment Banking Audit Committee, but what we're looking at here is dealing with Parks and Rec Department, and we had some bids come out for our holiday decorations. We took the low bid, $48,590. And then what they did, if you look under fiscal impact on the next page, is they put in a 10% contingency to be added to the agreement to cover anticipated demands, to make it a not to exceed $53,449. And at our last meeting, we saw a high number of base contracts. And again, we did send this to to Investment Banking Audit Committee. And many of those base contracts were exceeded by double, and sometimes in thousands of percents higher of what the initial base approval was. And I just wanted to compliment them and say that this should be used as a model going forward of how to handle some of our contracts, whether it's 10% or a higher contingency, but putting a contingency on a cap, I think is a great idea, and I just wanted to compliment on that. With that, I'll move item 6, unless there's further discussion.
Yeah, I just concur on that, and I believe this is probably part of the new policy, the operations that we're looking at and putting these numbers on here. So it looks like the operational procedures that you're implementing, this was part of it to begin with. So it's great to see. Thank you.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
I made
He
the
moved,
motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved unanimously. Item number 10, Do we have any discussions? If we don't, I guess my colleague, Councilmember John Mark Jennings, is recusing himself. So do I have a motion to approve as recommended?
I just point out, I believe we approved item number 10. We did consent
Okay,
because
then.
I abstained from that vote. So
Very good.
It's already been passed.
Very good, thank you. All right, now we are moving on to our next business item, which is city manager item number 1, and that is the allocation of city community services, cultural arts, after school, and special event grant funds. Interim Assistant City Manager Bell, please provide us a staff report.
If you could for a moment before we get into that, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. As I sent you a note today, and I wanted to make sure I repeated something that I said in the ad hoc committee. I do have children who are participating in programs which are on this grant committee, and I recuse myself from certain portions of the ad hoc committee, and I don't make recommendations to the council because of that recusal. And while I love this program, I'm going to have to abstain and recuse myself on this vote too, simply to avoid any appearance at all that I'm in any way touching this because of the contact that my children have at the school. I've discussed this with the city attorney, and while I don't believe that there may be an actual conflict, given the appearance of conflict, it's my intention to stay away from it. So that's my intention to do. And Mr. City Attorney, I would just like to ensure that I probably should remove myself from the dais while the council considers. Is that correct? Great, I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just.
Very good, thank you. We'll let you know. The report, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The City Council Ad Hoc Committee on Cultural and Cultural Grants and After School and Special Event Program Grants met and went through the applications that were received. We advertised on the city's webpage, and we did receive a total of 20 applications and totaling $91,185 in requests. The actual budget number for this item is $47,000. So there was some need to go through the applications very closely, which the ad hoc committee did, and was able to come up with the recommendations that you see before you this evening. For the most part, nearly every person that applied received some sort of funds, whether it was their full amount that they requested or in most cases slightly less than what they had requested. A couple of the applicants who had applied will be given opportunities to apply for other grants through the city. For example, the Aliso Niguel boys baseball team is eligible for a sports advisory committee grant and is probably more well suited for that grant program than this grant program. And they will be notified following council's action. So before you are all of the requests that are made. I'm not assuming that you want me to go through every list, but the committee did a great job of trying to make difficult decisions and to stretch every dollar that had been allocated in the budget. The committee consisted of Councilmember Jennings and Mayor Pro Tem Genoway. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good, thank you. Before I ask my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway to elaborate more on these, I just wanted to make sure, do I have any public speaking requests on this item?
No, Mayor, there are no cards.
The public comments is closed, and Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, it's wonderful to see all the great work that is being done in our community by many different organizations, providing cultural events, cultural programs, community service to those in need, and programs for our school children. Now, things that we looked at were whether or not it fit the criteria. Is this a community service? Is it a cultural arts program? We did have some apply that really didn't fit under that, but sometimes organizations hear there's money and will apply, and I give them credit for doing that. But we wanted to balance the availability of cultural arts programs throughout our community and through our schools. So we did look at the high schools, how much each had applied for. We also looked at our middle schools and our arts programs. So I believe all of the school programs that applied did receive a grant, with the exception of the baseball team, but that really is a sports advisory committee grant, and they will be given information on how to apply for that. But it's just wonderful to see. Some of these are new programs. One of them is new that they didn't have last year, and this is their very first year, and I would like to think maybe knowing that there's support from the community and from the city, that they're able to provide music lessons to our school children. So if you have any questions on anything specific, I'd be happy to answer that. But again, we have tremendous volunteers in our city, being sure to provide a cultural arts experience to our youth, to our adults, and also to provide services. Some of these you see on here did receive CDBG grants, and they did also then receive something under the umbrella of community services too. My colleagues have any questions on these? Okay.
No, I just have one question for you. What is the process if one of these applicants did not get any funding? Can they appeal to your ad hoc committee?
No, the ad hoc committee makes its recommendation to the city council. So as a council, we will approve this funding. They can always apply next year. Now, some of them, you know, as interim assistant city manager Bell had said, we had, I think, was it $97,000, $91,000 worth of applications and only $47,000 of funds. And I know some applied late, and there is a deadline, and you know, in the city, we do have to adhere to our deadlines. And then some just did not fit the cultural arts program.
The reason I raised that question, I noticed one of the applicants, the application I think was not processed because there was no signature on the application. So for those cases, I know we are a transparent city, and we're doing our best to allocate, you know, appropriate funding for any, you know, applicants. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, those individuals that submitted their applications, then somehow they would know about it. Exactly. It's one of those organizations that their application was not.
Well, there was no signature on that, and it also really did not meet the criteria of a cultural arts.
Right. And also, we had contacted them numerous times, and I mean numerous, like more than 5 times in the period after the application period closed, to ask them to please send over a signed application, and we received no response.
Oh, okay.
So we reached out to them to try and get that defect cured, but in that particular instance, the one that didn't have a signature,
correct,
didn't indicate that it had any services provided in the city of Laguna Niguel.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
just
please.
a quick comment. To answer your first question, the appeal body would be us, because they're
Of
making the
course, right, right.
recommendation to us. So they could have come here tonight. That happened, I know, one year when Ms. Davies and I were on there, that somebody came and asked one more time for counsel. And it's hard, and that's what I wanted to really comment is, again, I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Genoway and Councilmember Jennings. It's a lot of work. I did that for 3 years, and when you have 42,000 to spend over 91,000, they all seem to be very, very good causes. So I want to thank you for your efforts on this. And again, back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. If there are no more discussions, do I have a vote or motion to approve as recommended?
I move that we approve the cultural arts grants, after-school grants, and special event grants as recommended by the ad hoc committee, and that we also approve the transfer from the existing appropriations of $2,500 from the special events grant account to the after-school grants account.
I'll
Do I
second
have
it.
a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, with Councilmember John Mark Jennings recusing himself from this item. Very good. We're gonna wait for a moment for our colleague. All right, next is city manager item number 2, and that is status on purchasing. Interim city manager Erlinson, please provide a staff report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Based on an ongoing evaluation of the city's purchasing procedures to enhance the city's current processes, the following actions are currently being implemented to improve the city's purchase order and contract processes. First and foremost, we have conducted, again, 2 trainings for all city staff, part-time and full-time, related to the city's purchasing policies and procedures. We have also developed a financial vendor and contract tracking form, which will assist in managing contract spending levels on a real-time basis at the department level. This will ensure compliance with the city's purchasing policy of a $25,000 vendor cumulative threshold. That's a staff-imposed threshold. We have also compiled a contracts report. In doing so, at the last regularly scheduled council meeting on September 19th, we presented a list of contracts to the city council, either new contracts, an amendment to a contract, or an update to contracts that have no spending or no cap on work, and I'll address that in a little bit here. We're implementing new contract terms. Any agreements going forward and any currently expiring agreements or agreements that will be amended will coincide with the city's fiscal year. So July 1 to June 30. That way the contract year is in alignment with the fiscal year budget. We're also going to upgrade our financial accounting software, which will provide us with something we don't have currently, which is a purchasing and contract administration module that will bring us, into the 21st century. It will enhance controls in ways that, we should have had in, the past few years. Also, we will be performing an operational audit. The City Council on September 5th reviewed a scope of work for an operational audit and actually amended that scope of work to include some additional work, or you added an additional item. The RFP has been issued, it's made public, and the proposals are due on October 30th of 2017. After those proposals are evaluated, we will bring back a recommendation to the City Council to award a contract, possibly amend the budget based upon the cost of the operational audit, to look at city purchasing, now and going forward. We're looking to go forward. And that brings me to the last item. On September 19th, the City Council directed staff to place an item on the September 27th Investment Banking and Audit Committee agenda, requesting that the IB&A committee reviews the city's contracting procedures. Unfortunately, during this meeting, the IB&A committee was not able to complete that work. We will be scheduling a special meeting based upon feedback that I received from the IB&A committee members. It seems like October 18th will be the date of the special meeting. I'm going to confirm that tomorrow with the committee members. But the intention of the IB&A committee's review of contracting procedures is to achieve the following: to compare base contracts to actual historical expenditures, improve the budgetary process to adjust the base contracts to better estimate anticipated annual expenditures prospectively, and provide added transparency to the city's budgeting and spending processes. While the city's contracting practices have been in place for its entire history, the city is moving forward in the right direction in the form of these above improvements. I want to make that very clear. Staff emphasizes that there were no unaccounted for or missing funds under the prior contract practices. All work performed by city vendors was requested by city staff within the budgeted amounts approved by the council. All work has been performed by the vendors as requested, and there are no vendors claiming that they are owed funds beyond the amounts budgeted. Through the additional oversight by the IB&A committee, the city will enhance its transparency of the actual costs of its contracts. So again, we're using our IB&A committee composed of Laguna Niguel citizens to try to enhance purchasing and contracting citywide. So again, looking forward. It is staff's recommendation that the city council provide direction to staff related to the aforementioned actions undertaken to enhance the city's purchasing and contracting procedures. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive report. At this juncture, I wanted to open up the public meeting. The first speaker to be discussing this item is Mr. Dave Simpson. Please come forward. Welcome to your city council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff. My name is David Simpson. I'm the chairman of the Investment Banking Audit Committee, and I'm speaking here tonight in that capacity. As the interim city manager mentioned at our last regular, at the last regular council meeting on September 19th, the Investment Banking Audit Committee was directed to review the city's purchasing, contracting activities with the following tasks: to review the city's contracting procedures, discuss expansion of the duties and responsibility of the Investment Banking Audit Committee in the contract audit process, and finally to set limitations on the legally open-ended contracts. Per this request, we did meet last Wednesday at the last Investment Banking and Audit Committee, and unfortunately, due to time constraints, we didn't complete the item. A special meeting of the Investment Banking Audit Committee will be scheduled, as our interim city manager had noted, and any feedback from the public, the council, the staff during this review process will greatly be appreciated. The results of the committee review will be recommendations to the council for improvements to the city's contracting process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next is Mr. Richard Regal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, members of staff. You'll forgive me if I read. I want to make sure that I get my wordsmithing down right, and there's nobody back here to give me extra minutes, so I'll try to stick within my time. My name is Richard Regal. I live on Del Cobre in Laguna Niguel. I'm here tonight as the appointed vice chairman of our city's Investment Banking and Auditing Committee, building on what Mr. Simpson said. First, I want to thank this council for allowing us the opportunity to review the city's contracting procedures, including reviewing existing contracts and agreements. We began the process at our last scheduled meeting and intend to hold additional special meetings as needed. I'm here requesting the council permanently expand the scope of our committee's responsibilities to include review of and input into the city's procedures for contracting and purchasing found in our municipal code, including the strengthened administrative policy issued in November of 2016. In addition, I'm requesting the Investment Banking and Auditing Committee be given authority to inspect any discrepancies found in the annual audit with respect to spending in accordance with these contracts and agreements and found to be outside the parameters of your adopted administrative policy. I'm confident this council strives for openness and efficiency. I feel adding an additional layer to our committee's current oversight of the city's investment and banking policies will create greater transparency in the process of running Laguna Niguel. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Since there are no more public comments, the public comments is closed. So I wanted to start from my far left, my colleague, Council Member John Mark Jennings.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to thank staff, especially the interim city manager, for the report. I think this is exactly what we need. This is what we were contemplating. We've been talking about it for some time, and I appreciate the periodic updates on it. It occurred to me that this has probably been going on since the city's inception. For the last 25 years, we've been developing processes that can always be improved. I think one of the core principles of best practices that you continually review, you continually improve, you continually redefine what best practices are, and I think that's exactly what this looks like. Our city has gone from being in its infancy as a new creation through its development phase, through some growth, and I think we really are in the place now where we are, for lack of a better word, growing up. We are through the adolescent phase, and it is time, because of just the severity of what we're seeing, to make great strides in this regard to ensure that our contracts are tight. We've discussed those, and I've had discussions with you offline about what I view those to be. You know, we talked about it during the budgeting process. If we're going to budget an item for $500,000 and we have a base contract that for some reason is $25,000, that I think there's a real opportunity there in the front side of the contract to provide more substance to the contract, to provide more depth of exactly what we're going to do, because I think that the taxpayers deserve that level of transparency, because what we don't want to do is just invest money into the process and let staff say, well, we'll take care of it, because there is a tendency in government life, as with any other life that relates to a budget. If we budget $500,000 for something, it is a miraculous event that every year $500,000 will be spent. And I would like to try to avoid that tendency in budgeting when we really review actual contracts that have actual depth to them. And doing that, ever mindful of the fact that we can't guess everything. In fact, the very nature of what you all do as staff all year long is to deal with issues as they arise, make prudent decisions, and come back to the council with variances that appear on those contracts. And some are open-ended and some have not to exceeds, and I think we've developed good practices on how to do that. But that is a far better practice than what I think has been done from the inception of the city to date, and now that it's been raised to light, we can certainly do that. I was comforted by the fact that the staff was able to make the statements that there really aren't any funds missing, that everything's been performed, and there aren't any vendors asking for things, nor are there vendors thinking that they're overpaid. And now we have this a tremendous opportunity for our Investment Banking and Audit Committee to be a truly robust committee, in my mind, to look at things that deeply affect the finances of these and help us as a council. We have a lot of things going on, but one of the things we want to make sure that we have deep practice on is ensuring that our dollars are accurate. And I think that that's a fantastic idea for the Investment Banking Audit Committee. I would encourage that, and I'm not exactly sure, the city attorney, how we go about enhancing the scope of that, but I'm certain that there's a process in place, one of which would involve a recommendation to us on exactly what you think the need is and where it can be of service. We can debate that, add to it, subtract it, modify it some way, and then come back with a broader scope to provide that. And I think that's a fantastic job. So with that, I commend the efforts of city staff. I only encourage you and challenge you to keep that up. I think there's more to be done, and as we continue to look, we will continue to sharpen this practice. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Erlandson, for the report. It's very thorough. And as my colleague has said, that it's best practices to review your procedures and your policies. And I'm glad we're catching up with best practices. So I know there's been a lot of work on your part and on staff's part so that we can be doing this. And I know when we talked today during our agenda review, and I was questioning how many of the contracts have been looked at and did we take care of at the last meeting. And so about 80 to 90% of them have been looked at, and we either took care of them at the last meeting or they are the one-offs that need some special attention. But so I think our staff has done a very thorough review, and that will continue. And that's important for the city. I also know that at our last meeting, when we looked at those contracts and how they matched up to the budgeted amounts, and even though we hadn't gone over what we had budgeted, we were over on many of the contracts. I don't think that we were perhaps getting the best value for our dollar, because we want to be sure that when we are using a service provider or a vendor or any professional services in the contract, that they have bid for what the actual scope of work is. And if there's such a discrepancy between what we're budgeting and what the contract amount is, it means, you know, we're going in and we're buying small quantities when we really should be getting a value discount. Or maybe that isn't the best provider for us when we clearly identify what the scope of work is. So I think that was a good exercise in looking at, you know, some of those contracts may need to go out for bid, and they may come back, you know, a different, awarded to someone else, just because for the scope of work that they encompass. So I think this has been a lot of work. It needed to be done, and I know it continues. I appreciate the time that staff has put into it. And I also appreciate the recommendations from our members of our Investment and Banking and Audit Committee. That is, those are good recommendations, and that is something that we should have, I believe, come back to this council so that we can take action on that. But we also appreciate, I mean, you are our residents, and we appreciate your caring so much about the city that you want to do more work for us. But, and we will take you up on that offer. But I think this, you are approaching our purchasing issues. It's a multi-prong approach, which is what we need and which is very thorough. And still needs a little bit of time, but I think the bulk of the work is done. So thank you for your efforts in that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jenna Wade. All right, Council Member Jay Schlusowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, again, I want to point out that all these updates, changes, and recommendations that we're working on all came out of this year's AUP that Mayor Minigar and I worked on, and I'm glad to see that we're all taking this very seriously, and that these are very, very positive. And I think I want to thank the two colleagues on the Investment Banking Audit Committee for coming out and spending their evening with us. And again, I think that their recommendations are very well heeded. You know, budgeting and contracting are different animals. And just as the government deficit and the government debt are completely different animals as well. So it's very interesting that I had highlighted that exact paragraph that Interim City Manager Erlinson read, because of course there were no unaccounted for or missing funds because we get receipts for everything. And there was all the work by the city vendors was requested under the budgeting amounts. And all work performed by the vendors was done as requested, and there's no one claimed we owed them any money because we are good and again, we pay our bills, we've got plenty of money. It'd be crazy not to. But what we're missing the point on this paragraph, and that's why I highlighted, is again, we're not talking about budgeting today. We're not talking at all about that. We're talking about contracting management and contracting procedures, which is again a different animal than the budgets. Again, we have a lot of money in the bank. Or in reserves, and we do budget all that. So when we look forward, which again I think is the intent of all of us here to look forward, as everyone's made clear, it's just important that no matter what you do in life, whether you're traveling from here to New York City or Washington, D.C., or if you're planning to retire, or if you're a city planning to try to fix where you are in terms of your finance and controls, the only way to move forward is to know exactly where you are today. And so when we get to the next item, I'll elaborate a little further on that. But again, I applaud our efforts on this. It's great, and I appreciate all you're doing with that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Last but not least, Councilwoman Lori Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mirror my colleagues. I want to thank you and your staff. Obviously, we had some concerns that were addressed, and the speed that you put this together, very impressed. Not only that, but you actually started implementing this process a couple weeks ago. And I think we've already noticed a difference. It was good procedure. It's definitely much more thorough. It's great to see the transparency that you have gone back. There are contracts that need to be renewed, and so we're working that way. So I really do believe we are going back. We're taking care of that inside, you know, within the house. And I also I'm grateful because we're going to have the new software. And when will we have that software? I know it takes a while to get up and running.
The implementation we're in the planning stages right now. From implementation to going live, so us actually switching from our current software to the new software, we're looking at about the end of summer of 2018.
Okay. And thank you. I also want to thank our chair and vice chair of IBA. We have got such a talented group of members on that committee, and the fact that you come out on a Tuesday night. But I think you're going to be very helpful, and I'm looking forward to hearing, some of the things you'd like to implement and take on a few more responsibilities, because we do look to you. You're our experts, and we appreciate that. So I want to thank you, and I think this is a great an item, and I would definitely support it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Well, what I can say is since July and August, city staff and the council have worked very hard to develop and implement specific new measures, basically with regard to enhancing more accountability in the city and to create more public trust when it comes down how the public, what's their perception of what we do, all five of us, and also the city staff. So building public confidence is very crucial in all the efforts with regard to the status on purchasing. And obviously, all of us, we do advocate enhancing transparency. Transparency is, if not job number one, it has to go along with, building the public confidence. At the end of the day, we have fiduciary responsibilities to all the taxpayers, to all the residents in this great city, to make sure that all the hard-earned tax money that they've been contributing is well spent. And last but not least, I've been camping out at the City Hall for the past couple of weeks or so. And I think it would be equal to all my time that I've served in the council, only for one thing. And I appreciate for all the things that you brought up, my colleague council member, Jerry Schlusewitz, because I did serve with you in the audit committee as the number two or as the second person. Having observed, having seen, having looked at those, in my judgment, not as a mayor, but as one of the 5 members of this great city council, I think the city's on the right track. I wanted to applaud the city staff. I'm very happy with that. And as my colleague knows, I'm a straight shooter, and I'm making this public comment that you are getting above my even expectation, because I wanted to make sure that every contract, every project is accounted for. We know about the budget, we know about the process, we know about the duration, and you guys are working hard. I recognize that, as my colleague mentioned, we don't have that fancy 21st century software for you, for your finance department, and for all the department heads and project managers in this great city to be able to monitor it online. So we've gone through a lot of growing pain in this great city, but anytime we catch a fish is fresh, anytime we minimize losses, profit's gonna pour in. So in my judgment, I'm very pleased with all the improvements, all the accomplishments that the city have done. And also I wanted to echo what my colleagues have mentioned about IBNA committee. We have the greatest talents of Wall Street being local in our great city. And all of them, with our chairman Simpson, with our vice chair, these are the best gurus that we have when it comes down to public finance, accounting, and the overall financial system of the city. So we have a lot of watchdogs in place. We have a lot of checks and balances in the system. So by not repeating what my colleague says, as long as we are improving purchasing accountability, which is number one, number two, we are building public confidence, and number three, as I said, we are enhancing the transparency, and I, for one, along with all my colleagues, we are open to answer any questions that anyone may have. Those contractors, if they perform their jobs, they are entitled to get paid. I don't want to go back and just use a magnifying glass to see that they did their job. So they have to, rightfully so, they have to get paid. So with that, I don't have any more comments, and if my colleagues don't have any more comments or discussions or amplifications, then I would like to entertain any motion to move forward.
I looked at the item. I'm not sure that there's a motion at the
No,
end.
there's
of it.
not.
Just to receive a
For
report.
the direction is
Direction is
staff
the
to
city
come
staff
back
is
to
looking.
us with the recommendation regarding
Correct.
the IBNA committee
That's right.
and their expanded role.
So who's making the motion to
Do we need a motion or just direction of staff?
direction?
I think you ought to have a motion.
Okay,
Okay,
I
then we
move
make it a
that
motion.
we request staff to come back to us with a recommendation regarding the Investment Banking Audit Committee and expanding their role.
That's second.
as.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh. Did you want to add to it?
No, I was just gonna second where you were, so keep going.
Okay, well, then I'll be done.
Now, second.
Okay.
Very good. All in favor? Aye. The motion is approved unanimously. Now, we are getting to the next item, which is a city council item. And it's city council item number 1, and that is request for an additional agreed upon procedures engagement related to purchasing. And because my colleague, Councilmember Jerry Schlusowitz, brought it up, this item is yours, and you can proceed with a staff report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Erlinson, interim city manager, for allowing me to speak on this. Again, this has been pushed back a few times, so I think we're all pretty familiar, but from the AUP engagement, we had uncovered a few things that we're all very aware of at this point in time. And everything on this item has to do with contracting. It has nothing to do with budgeting whatsoever. So don't interchange those two words, because this doesn't have anything to do with the budget. What we're looking at here is an expansion of the agreed upon procedures of engagement for purchasing to look at a third of our vendors, which are 670. And so far, at least this council has only discussed, I think it's 32 of the vendors. And we've seen, some overspending on one contract that had a hard cap of $410,000, and on some other ones that had base contracts that were had time and materials that were off, to the tune of a couple million more in terms of what I would consider as excess spending. So to look at this is just to be transparent for our taxpayers. And it's very, very important that we do this. This is all about contract management, and it's part of the thing we just talked about. We're looking at procedures, but part of procedures is knowing where you are. You have to know where the leaks are in the boat to be able to fix the boat. It's really important. We had procedures before, and we didn't necessarily follow them, which is how we got into some of the spending that we're all aware of. On the September 5th meeting, in front of all of us, our auditor company, the Poon Group, Ken Poon, he recommended that this was something that we should do. He said, you should definitely do it, said it right in front of all of us. It's really important. I do think, though, different than the way the staff report is written, it's very important that I think what Mr. Jennings brought up at a previous meeting is that we don't need any ad hoc on this whole deal. This would be something that if it is approved by this body tonight, it would be staff and council advice to develop the RFP, and then direct staff to report back to the city council as a whole body, so that city consider A would be completely out, B would be changed, directing the ad hoc committee to be staff and council advice to develop it, and then direct, instead of ad hoc committee staff, to report back with the recommendation for the qualified. I'd like to make sure that that's understood by my colleagues as we consider this item. I did speak to Mr. Erlinson and Ms. Bell earlier in the day about that, and that's why he let me run this. So I just think, going forward, it's important to understand, if you look under the, is this A? Hang on, let me go back here. Yeah, attachment A. California Constitution, Article 11 prohibits payments above contract limits. So again, not budgets, contract limits. That's all we're talking about here. And it's the first line in there. And we know that we've spent above contract limits. It's not, debatable anymore. We've all admitted that. We saw that overpayment of the $409,000. I thought it's also important that we look forward. Give me a second here. This was Mr. Jennings. And again, I totally agree with him. But it also was stated, back in July 24th, that if there was a hint of impropriety when it came to our contracting, when it came to management of contracts, I know my colleagues, several of them had said that they'd be in favor of an expanded procedure checking city spending on contracts. Again, where we stand today, I think that that is not just a hint, but an avalanche of overspending, and we need to know where it is. If we know which vendors have the issues, if we're transparent to the taxpayers, then it's not just looking at the procedures. You're only looking at part of the problem. Now you know where to apply those procedures because we know where the numbers are. And again, it goes with the California Constitution. I want to remind you, we had Chris Street here at one of the meetings, I think it was August 1st. Chris mentioned, he said, if you refuse to have the audit, someone comes up later and shows that there's a problem, we need to all account for our personal liability. He said that in front of us. He was former county treasurer, and it goes to each one of us. I have checked. I'm a fiduciary, and it's interesting, Mr. Minigar on the last item was talking about us being a fiduciary. I am a fiduciary with my professional life. I have to put down when I'm on a city council as an outside business activity, and I just recently went through a state audit, and the state auditor was in there and talked about this exact item. And they said, as a fiduciary, since I'm a fiduciary of my own money, and I believe Ms. Genoway is as well, the money I manage at my company, that I have to be a fiduciary to the taxpayer money equally. And so if we think that there was some unauthorized contractual spending, which we know there was, then we have an obligation to the taxpayers that we have to let them know if there's any more. Much like an unauthorized transaction or a trade in my industry. If someone were to be found in a firm that did an unauthorized trade, even if it resulted in a profit to the individual that the unauthorized trade was done for, and that was filed as a complaint, then what would happen, they wouldn't just look at the one trade. They would immediately expand for that individual every trade that they've done going back a period of time. And this is exact same thing. It's not an unauthorized trade, it's an unauthorized contractual transfer of money. Was it accounted for? Yes. Did we ask for it? Yes. Did they do the work? Yes. Was the work impeccable? Maybe, sure, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about contract management. We know that we've gone over contracts. I think it's a big problem for us to do that, to expand this audit and do this. I found it interesting that under the last item, the interim city manager, he said we should have had this in place a long time ago. And to me, when he says that, as the as the co-finance director in his other title, he's almost saying he knows that we needed the last item. And why? Because there's problems with our contract management. We need to know where those problems are. Only going to come from an audit. That's the only way we can figure it out. I also found it interesting that in public comments, Ms. Davies, Councilmember Davies said the Sober Living Homes that we should follow the money. And I agree, we should follow the money for that. That's exactly what this item is. Let's follow the money. We know if we do this audit, we'll figure out where those contracts are that had the overspending. And just like Ms. Davies said, we follow the money. That makes the item before this, the procedurals, so much easier because we know where the leaky boat is. And we're talking about millions of dollars of taxpayer money. It's interesting. California Treasurer John Chang, it's noted that he's a Democrat that wants to run for governor. He's made very clear that he's interested in looking at these cases. There's a bill before the governor, it's AB 804, and what it is, it's to take cities that have contract mismanagement and look at them and do an outside state audit. So again, I want to close with the fact that Ken Poon of the Poon Group recommended that we do a further expansion of audit, and Mr. Street's comments that if there is an audit, let's just say Mr. Chang decides to audit the city of Laguna Niguel, and then they do find other contracts because we refuse to do this audit, what is our personal liability? I, for one, don't want to have any. I therefore want to make a move that we, move forward on this. But obviously I know it's under discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Laurie Davis, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. Director Earlson, in regards to the operational process that we're doing right now, are we also doing an internal, going back internal kind of count on these contracts? And again, not talking about the money, as Councilmember Swisswitz, the contracts, and any contracts that we're going back on and we're finding that need to be extended, renewed, that's what we're doing right now, but we're doing this in-house, correct?
That's correct. We began that process on September 19th. We brought our first series of contracts, whether they were new contracts, an amendment, or just daylighting contracts that don't have caps, what we think the spending might be for the current year. That was all brought to the council on September 19th, and we will continue to bring contracts and agreements as they pop up, if they need to be adjusted, amended, or anything else.
And you're also doing this in all departments, correct?
Citywide.
Yep. All right. And in regards to the statement of following the money, as you said, you have gone back and everything has been paid, all invoices. There's no one that's outstanding, so the money has been accounted for.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. My colleague, Councilmember John Mark Jennings.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the same question, so thank you very much, Mr. Davis. I made a substitute motion last time this came up to create a procedures audit, which was approved by all of the council. And really, my intent by doing that was to try to catch this very thing. That if we have a grasp on what our procedures are, how the processes work, what the contracts say, and what the amounts are, that was a substantial way towards getting to the root of this. And I think I applaud the council's effort on it because that's the right thing to do. Beyond that, we have the agenda report that we just took up, which was the city staff taking additional efforts. And in that investment banking and audit committee section, they're specifically being considered to compare the base contracts to historical expenditures to improve the budgetary process and adjust the base contracts, and then provide additional transparency to the budgeting process. I think that's the appropriate belts and suspenders to do exactly what it is that we want to do by this. And I think that we will get through, and I just asked the question, that will go through every single contract that the city has. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, and so with that, I think we're having a multi-tiered comprehensive review happening, all of which is directed not only to the city, but to the experts that we've put on our committees to advise us about what the appropriate next steps are. And if there's anything to be caught, then it can come back. And one of the things we talked about in this process, and I want IB&A to look at it, is trying to create thresholds on our setting aside the not to exceed, the other contracts, the base contracts, setting aside a maximum percentage that kick those contracts out of the system and back into IB&A so that they can review them. And when we do that, then we can also set up the new accounting system to do that very thing. They add additional review. Is what that means then. So if we end up with some type of landscaping contract or a paving contract or something, that additional work is done, and that's where I kept seeing it happen over and over again, where we'd guessed at one base amount and then additional work was being done in the field, that we catch that there's some additional level of approval needed, and then that enhances transparency, enhances oversight, and that really is sort of the growing up of this process. So with that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway.
Okay, well, thank you, Councilman Jennings. You said everything I was going to say. But we did talk about an operational or procedural audit, and I think because a problem was identified. We know that there's a problem, but then the operational audit and the procedures and what we're going to be working with our the recommendations from our IB&A committee, and also the list of contracts that staff has gone back to us. That is looking at the contracts and moving forward on how do we not have this happen again, and how do we have a system in place so this does not recur. And that we need to move forward on this. And and the reason we do is, we know what we need to do because a problem was identified. So I think I would like to see us move forward with that operational audit as we had talked about in the past. And I just want to clarify, or if you could please clarify, when the contracts that are remaining that were not on the list, and you said when they pop up, I mean, you do have a list of ones, you know what other ones need to be addressed, and you will bring those forward to us as it warrants.
That's correct.
Okay, all righty. So basically every contract has been identified already on whether or not it needs to come to us, or if it's okay as is, or if we took care of it on September 19th.
Yes, we reviewed about 80 to 90% of our contracts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick questions for you. The first one is, based on what you just mentioned, that the RFP was issued, so basically, and by the end of October.
Yeah, so the proposals are due on October 30th.
Okay.
That's a Monday. At that point in time, staff will look at the proposals based upon qualifications, cost, and make a recommendation to the city council. So all proposals will be listed in the staff report that comes back to you with the staff recommendation. At that point, once the council decides to award a contract to one of those professional service corporations, the work would be done.
And how long would it take? When is your anticipation? You said by the end of the summer in 2018.
For the new software.
For the new software. Okay.
To be fully functional.
So, 3 financial questions. The first one is, what is the cost of the software for the public record?
We had budgeted $250,000.
Okay.
But the final bid, so that includes staff training, software implementation, all in, is approximately $175,000 to $200,000.
Okay. I want to be on the high side. $250,000 is going to be allocated to that aspect. Second one is, we are in the process of hiring a third-party firm, as you mentioned, to take care of all those, assessments, evaluations, and to come up with specific recommendations for us. In the hypothetical case that my colleague, Councilmember Jerry Schlusowitz, is referring to, what would be the potential cost of that audit to look at all these contracts that we got over 600 vendors involved?
I think it's a third, right? This is for 1/3 of them.
Yeah, I think the proposed recommendation was to look at about approximately 200 vendors, which would be about 1/3 of our active vendor list. Well, based upon the AUP for purchasing that was just performed on 21 vendors, the total cost was about $15,000. So just doing simple math without having an actual proposal, if you basically multiply that by 10, potentially you could be looking at $150,000. Again, that's simple math. I can't give you an exact answer without, receiving a proposal.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I know you have the floor, but if I may.
No, please, just one question.
Well, no, Mr. Erlandson, I think that's a little bit disingenuous. As you know, we've talked about what we're trying to do here. This is looking for red or green. So to compare it to the previous AUP, we have talked about that's not what we're going to do here. This is not to try to replicate the previous AUP and look to see aggregate purchases. This is not to look to see if there's a wet signature. This is not to see, did the department head, do something. As you know, we talked about this, and you gave me a significantly different number when I was in your office, and I just find it interesting.
For rough order of magnitude.
Yeah, but again, all we're looking for is if a contract's $140,000, it's green if it's under. If it's green, it's 140, but a minute goes over to 410,000, it's red. And so we're not trying to do the last, so why did you compare it? So why don't you give a different number, because I think it was significantly less.
Well,
No, well, just the, what we're talking, this is this item. We're here on October 3rd, talking about this item. So I'd like you to restate that, because when you and I talked about it in your office, you gave me a significantly lower number than that.
Can I jump in there real quick? I'm sorry, but our mayor was speaking. I just want to go back to the council conduct and decorum. And item number 5, it's honor the role of the mayor in maintaining order and equal treatment of all council members. Allow each council member to speak on an item before rebuting or providing additional discussion on a matter. And he's not done yet.
I did ask for permission, though.
He-
I did. I
he-
said,
He
excuse
said
me.
he'd like to have one more item, and then you kept going. So I think it's really important that we respect the policy that we all approved. Thank you.
Councilmember, thank you. Councilmember Jerry Schlusser, your points are well taken. As you said, the floor is mine, and we are extremely civilized in this great city, and that's what I enjoy the most about being in this great city. With that said, I'm asking specific questions from our Director of Finance. So, because I want to portray the bigger picture. So, with all those expenditures that we are allocating to spend, and I've sat down with you, we've gone over all those 8 specific different ways that we discussed the city can improve, improvise, enhance the existing system that we have here. I recognize, I acknowledge the system we've had was not the best, still is not the best, but we are working very hard to automate it, to have all those checks and balances with a system that online we can basically monitor on a daily basis. And you, as the Director of Finance, you can always, when I ask you a question or any of my colleagues, you can say that, oh, this project is in good shape financially, what have you. Then all these are with regard to improving the system. And by the way, this is to elaborate a bit with what my colleague, Councilmember Jerry Schlubitz said. By the way, I was one of those 17 individuals that had the honor of being invited by the government of China, and one of the 17 members happened to be the great State Treasurer John Chang. I used to run with him every morning for 10 days when I was in China. I know him personally, by the way, and I discussed things out of the, not to be specific about this city. So I've talked to him about a lot of different things, hypothetical cases, and I feel very comfortable with the direction that this city is taking. So, with all that said, I for one, and obviously then we're going to put it out to, the vote of my colleagues. At this juncture, I don't see any reason that when you've already implemented 2 out of 8, and you're working very hard with your staff and with your colleagues to improve more, I don't see any reason to go beyond that. Plus, at the end of the day, I've asked you all those specific questions when we had our personal meetings, that everything has been accounted for. So, and every contract, every project, we already know how much budget we had, and it was approved by this council, by all of us. So, and again, as I mentioned, all those contractors, consultants, they performed, they got paid. And by the way, I've talked to other people too, higher up, and when it comes down to contractors or consultants having performed services for a municipal corporation, as long as we have paid, they've rendered the services, we have paid them, then we are in a good shape. It's not like, we have no control over the budget. So not to repeat what my colleague said, I'm very pleased with the process, with the procedures, and with the direction that we are moving to. So with that, I would like to entertain a motion if anyone would like to chime in.
I'll make the motion that we direct staff and city council to develop a request for proposal, including the procedures to reform in a separate agreed-upon procedure engagement, to expand the scope of the AUP, present to the city council. Again, it's to look at 200 vendors and just for spending only to the contract limit, and direct staff to report back to the city council with a recommendation of qualified vendor to perform additional agreed-upon procedures engagement.
Do we have any second on the proposed motion? All right. Then I wanted to entertain a second motion or a substitute motion.
I think you just let it die, right, City Attorney? It failed.
It did fail because, by the way, as you mentioned that there is no need for the ad hoc committee and on and on and on. So therefore, Mr. City Attorney, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the protocol, since we are not making any specific motion, basically we are going to table this item.
No, it's denied.
No, I know it failed. So then we're done.
Anyone else wants to make another motion? If not.
Well, I
seems to me the
requested
item
for-
is over.
Okay. I requested for a substitute motion. Very good. All right, thank you. Moving on. The next one, which is our last business item, is Public Works item number 1, and that is approval of the concept design for entry sign monuments and decorative elements on Crown Valley Parkway as part of landscape medians and monuments project at various locations. And with that, I wanted to ask Mr. Ziad Zabudi, our engineering services manager, to provide us a staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. Presenting to you today some concept design for the entry sign monuments and decorative elements on Crown Valley Parkway. I'd like to give a little background on some of the project and some of the other elements that are with it, and then I'll dive into the specific project. As part of some of the beautification projects that we have, we looked into installing 2 Gateway Freeway pylon signs at Allen Cadillac dealership and the AT&T sites right off the 5 freeway at Crown Valley. And that project is under construction now, and it's expected to be completed sometime in November of this year. The other project that we have is the construction of landscape median islands on Aliso Creek from Alicia Parkway to Doreen, on La Paz Road between Aliso Creek and Avila, and then on Cabot from Crown Valley to Paseo de Colinas. And that project, the plans are almost complete, and it should be coming to the City Council for authorization to advertise on October 17. There was an entry corner monument as part of this project at the southeast corner of Aliso Creek and Alicia Parkway. This project, once we get an approval on how to move on the other elements, we will tie that corner monument to that and we'll follow through. There was a sculpture monument anticipated originally as part of the gateway, and that project was put on hold due to the potential high cost of the project. Then we'll get into the two elements that we have in front of us tonight. The map that in front of you shows you the entry monuments are at the various locations throughout the entry to the city, and they are shown on the map in yellow. The other elements are the decorative elements, and these are the elements that are proposed along Crown Valley at the major intersection on Crown Valley. So this item has been going on for over a year, gone to many ad hoc committees, many meetings, many concepts, and we're presenting to you tonight 2 concepts that would like to see some input on them. So in front of you, I'm showing you the entry monument with option, we're calling it option A, and I'll explain the difference. So this one shows the front and the back of the proposed monument. This monument has some veneer. In the front, it's called craft split modular, and these vary from 2.5 inches to 5 inches in size. And then the metal, the large portion of the monument is Corten steel, and that Corten steel with time it will rust and the color changes a little bit from what you're seeing. So the following actually decorative element that ties to that, those are the ones along Crown Valley. So it ties kind of similar to that, similar type of veneer and similar metal. The logo that you're seeing there is an aluminum, it's painted or etched and it's cut into it. And that's what's shown on the back. So that's option A. And we're showing you here some sizes roughly to, you know, how a person ties to it. So these are about 10 foot tall, and the one on the right is about 4 foot wide. The one on the left is about 8 feet wide. The difference between option A and option B, and I'm going back and forth in the slide, is the option A is that steel painted or etched. The option B is the porcelain colorful logo. So these are kind of the difference between the two type. This one would show you kind of how the entry monument would look like. It will have some drought tolerant low landscape. So we wouldn't have much overspray onto the sign. And the back of it could actually be, if we choose, let's say, option A, the back could be color or the back could be the etched. So either one is our choice. So the decision when we say option A or B, we could mix the logo on the front or the back. And this is how the decorative element would look in the median as well. And as I said, these will as you're approaching a major intersection, you will see it. That ends my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much for your presentation. After almost 3 years or so, I myself and Councilmember Jerry Schlusserwood, we've served in that, that committee for that long, and we've explored all different options. I'm very pleased that we're getting to the end of the tunnel. It's about time to rejuvenate, revitalize, beautify, accentuate the entry points and even the mid-blocks of this city. When you go to other cities in Southern California, cities that are compatible socioeconomically and demographically, they all have these. I can mention Calabasas, I can mention Chino Hills, I can go on and on and on, and it's about time, and I'm very happy with both. So they look great. I guess I'm gonna just start asking my colleagues to comment. It's like going to an eye doctor, A or B. So then I take notes to see which one's gonna get the majority of the votes, if hopefully unanimous. And I start from my far left, Councilmember John Mark Jennings.
Thank you. A couple things I wanted to make sure that we noted. I had a couple of questions to staff, and they answered them well, so I want to make sure that we get them covered here. You mentioned the spray, because we all know that monument signs sometimes get hit with sprinklers, and when they do, you have color variations between the metal that gets hit and the metal that doesn't get hit, and these are metal, and the whole fascia is metal. And so the answer that I got was if this is drought tolerant, they would be drip irrigated, if any, and so therefore there wouldn't be water spraying on that. Any spray that would hit it would be rainfall, which should be more or less uniform across it. So I didn't find that to be a problem. The other thing I was worried about is because they're metal, were they susceptible to etching or graffiti or vandalism or something like that? Something I didn't know, but something that's very interesting is they have a graffiti coat that goes on top of that, the way that we can clear that off is either by power washing or sandblasting if needing, and that would remove the graffiti coat, but every now and then you have to go back and put the coat back on, so that's good. The only question I thought of when I saw the overhead in the large size like that was you mentioned the rusting, and sometimes when you have non-galvanized material on stone like this, when it rusts, you also have leakage down the face of the stone. And I was a little bit concerned, not about this one, but on the slide that you were just on, about the seal on the back side of just the stone, because the other ones seem they'd be linking on themselves, so we wouldn't see that. But this one might, and I don't know if that's a valid concern or not, but if it is one, I want to make sure that we think about it. It isn't galvanized, obviously, so do you know whether or not it would have rust potential leakage?
I'm not sure that's gonna leak the rust, but we'll definitely ask the
you know what I
designer
mean?
on that.
No,
I understand. You're talking about if the water, as it comes in contact, it's gonna carry with it some of the rust onto the stone.
It bleeds down, and I've used, in my home decorations, I've mistakenly used non-galvanized nails and things. and it ends up making a mess later on. So if you would, please think about that.
We'll definitely ask.
Commenting on the designs for a second, one, I want to give great credit to both Councilmember Sluswitz and the mayor. I do like these. I think that they're very attractive. In my mind, they mirror what we've been seeing at the parks, which I also like. I think they're neat. I was not, frankly, expecting the additional way signs for Golden Lantern and other ways, and I think that's a nice addition. I like the way it looks. If I was picking preferences, I found it's one of the reasons I was looking backwards to see the city seal in its gold form. My preference is the ceramic seal in full color on the front side of the large sign. I think that's in keeping with what we've done at the parks. It's in keeping with some of our other badging around the city. We're fairly proud of the way those look, and I think I think option B is my preference. Having said that, I like the back of option A, the cut non-ceramic one, the cut metal one. I think that's a very attractive feature, which essentially takes option A and puts it on the back side of the way signs, which I thought was an attractive touch. I don't want to discount it all. I think it's a good use for it. And if we can get some type of confirmation that it doesn't have that type of bleeding that I'm worried about it that it might, then my recommendation that we would use the front side of option A. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The front side of option B and the back side of option A. And I think that means I either need bifocals or something. So if I used A or B or both. One question I did have, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it, or I would have asked you all when we met earlier, is they're only on Golden Lantern. For reasons that weren't in my mind, I thought that we had one or two that were, I'm sorry, they're only on Crown Valley. They're only on Crown Valley. In my mind, I had placed mentally some on Golden Lantern, and that isn't the case. Is there a reason for that?
When they did, I believe, the Crown Valley median for the entire city, the council at the time recommended, and there were discussions about placing these around Crown Valley. No reason specific that I know of. I mean, eventually in the future, we could budget and install similar stuff on all of our major arterials, but it's been on the budget. When I started here, the Crown Valley decorative elements were included in the budget, and we incorporated. So there's no real reason. I mean, eventually we could budget in the future and add the same to other arterials.
Well, we do have, if I counted correctly, we have 13 of those signs along Crown Valley. Is that right?
That's correct.
I'm now realizing where I got it from, because the sample that you gave us says Golden Lantern. So I just naturally assumed that it was on Golden Lantern, but it isn't. It's Crown Valley, isn't it? I don't know what my colleagues think, but 13 on one street seems like a lot. I'd be sort of inclined to have some on one street, maybe half of those along Crown Valley, and let's find a home on Golden Lantern, on Moulton, on La Paz, or whatever we can that would sort of mirror that around town, so that all of the town feels like they're getting this new.
And if I may add, so when they built the medians on Crown Valley, they had wiring already for them. They kind of established certain things for them. And I think in anticipation of this project, they kind of identified the location. So when we started this project, that's kind of what was already pre-planned, and that's why we're putting them at those locations that were identified. Not that we can't put them somewhere else. I'm just stating.
Yeah, and I hear you on that. I just I'd be surprised if we don't have some median voltage someplace along Golden Lantern. We must.
Oh, they may be. I'm not saying we're not. We don't.
Before we approve, I mean, 13 is a lot for Crown Valley Parkway. So I think that we should seriously consider having that and moving out the rest of them to someplace that is appropriate. And frankly, I'm not exactly sure it matters terribly much where along the thoroughfares they are. I mean, as long as they're at prominent intersections, Marina Hills and Crown Valley comes to mind, something along that line. But these are really attractive elements that I think would enhance all parts of our town, and I'd like to see them try to incorporate there. And again, my apologies for not bringing that up, because I should have if I'd thought about it, and I frankly didn't. So. And that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, without interrupting, I just want to, because
No,
I don't
it's
want,
yours.
I don't want to go now. I'd like to go last since I was on the committee. But I just
Okay.
would like to add color without interrupting, as I asked before, for permission. So can I ask permission and make a comment, please?
Please.
Thank you. One of the reasons, and again, Ziad, you can help me on this, that there's 13, and that's, is that there, like the Golden Lantern, you'll notice on the map, there's one before Golden Lantern on Crown Valley and then one after Golden Lantern, it's depending on if you're heading north or south. So the reason for the high number is that's really only an entrance from the south is the one where Pacific Island is. Because the other side of Pacific Island is Dana Point, that's why there's only one on that one. And then the other 12 are really only covering 6 intersections. And again, I'm not disagreeing with what you said, Councilmember Jennings, but I just wanted you to clarify that that's not identifying 13 streets, it's really identifying really 7. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to interrupt.
Let me ask then, would each of the signs, and thanks for that, would each of the signs just say Crown Valley, or would a sign at the intersection blanketing Niguel Road say Niguel?
Correct. None of the signs are going to say Crown Valley. They're all on Crown
all
Valley.
cross
They're
streets.
identifying the cross street that you're approaching. So that's why, as Councilmember Lusowitz said, these are for the major intersections. So
Crossing streets.
if we
Crossing.
across
Crossing.
streets,
All right, that's
correct.
helpful.
So if you remove some, you're actually missing on some of these major, and that's why I mentioned if the council is interested, we can in the future budget for other majors such as Alicia or Golden Lantern or any of the other, streets to add similar to what we're doing here.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate the clarification, that's helpful, and 13 doesn't seem like as much now, so thanks very much. See what you did there. But I to follow up your last point, I do think it's a good idea. If we do these, and I think they're as received like they would be, I think that they're a beautiful element that will really enhance the rest of the city as well.
Very good. Councilwoman Lori Davies?
Thank you. I concur. I would definitely go with B. I think that if you look at it, we have our brand new street lights and they have the colored signature, so this would definitely coordinate with that as well. This is something I would say, I know it's been long overdue. You guys have been working on this for a very long time, and thank you for that. I do have a question. I know we were also, wasn't this part of the project we were going to do Aliso Creek too, and kind of the boulevard down the middle, and also on the corner of Alicia and Aliso Creek for signage, mainly because that is our entrance. If you're coming from Laguna Hills or you're coming from Aliso Viejo, that's our front door, and I think we all know that it's not very attractive. And I could have sworn that was a discussion we had years ago, but from what I heard, we wouldn't be doing that corner, correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
Right.
Once we choose one, then we're going to take whatever we're choosing, and now we're going to develop that corner monument. So yes, that dirt area that you have at the corner there, we've presented many concepts, and now that we have a concept, now we'll have the designer focus on that, and then we'll come back with a concept design for that whole corner that will have landscape, lighting, and a larger monument than what you're seeing here.
And what would be the time if this is passed to implement these signs on Crown Valley?
Well, once the council selects what we want, we'll finalize the plans probably in the next month or so, and then we'll put them out. We'll come back to council to approve the plans, and put them out to bid. So probably by sometime early next year, we'll be in full construction.
Okay, thank you. I know that was one of the things we were talking about, and I know that's future, but I was kind of hoping it was going to be included at the same time with this, which this is fine. It's beautiful. We're doing a lot of great improvements. I think it'll definitely enhance with the Tier 1, 2, 3 project in regards to the design we're doing. And I like option B, and I'm fine with doing option A in the back, but I definitely think that option A in the front with the colored city seal is definitely the way to go. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Jay Schlusowitz?
Okay, having served on that committee for a long time, I want to thank staff for their diligent work in getting this thing to this point. And again, I want to thank my colleague, Mayor Minigar, as well, for expeditiously moving this thing along here, especially near the end. Yeah, it does show the corner monument on this graph. at that location. And again, as I understand it, staff could probably help me on this, the Aliso Creek median has nothing to do with these signs, correct? That's a whole separate project.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure that we don't tie those two together. As far as that location, and again, it is pretty ugly. There's a lot of things we could do to fix that corner because it's horrible. But there's been some previous proposals on this committee level, never got to council, that we use an area off of, let's say, Cabot and Crown Valley as a major entrance point. As a matter of fact, it was on the books. They actually had it, was going to come to our annual budget review on there, but it was $750,000. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why that thing was backed off from this project, because of the prohibitive expense, and that, again, obviously council can direct anything over what the ad hoc committee said, but what Mayor Minigar and I thought is, let's get the entrance monument of these multiple locations and the wayfaring signs in through first. And then I think that I agree with Councilmember Jennings. It'd be great to see these all over the city, and as well as that corner monument. But I think that we should probably negotiate as a council body what corner that is, if it is that corner, or if it's another one off of Crown Valley. I also thought that Councilmember Jennings' points were well taken about the wayfaring signs. With the main signs, the big ones, the entrance monument signs, that shouldn't be a problem as far as the rust leaking down. But it looks to me, if they put some sort of a capture basin around the bottom of that golden lantern, and then maybe a funnel down through the brick through the inside, that might be an easy way to catch that as far as the design goes. So I think
some way to protect the veneer in case
yeah,
we have.
I think his points are very well taken. I just want to make sure that we look at that closely, because you don't want these things getting ugly quickly.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the bottom front. It's really the back one that I think that it might have the biggest problem, because there isn't any way to catch it. So, but for all I know, these may be coated in enamel or something, but maybe they could be.
Yeah, if I may, the city seal going on the back, that'll be made of aluminum, so that will not rust.
Anyways, just in closing, I agree. I'm going to go with my colleague so far on this thing. I think the B front and A back, I think that's the way to go. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
B front, A back. Last but not least. Yeah. We're in full agreement so far. Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Minigar and Councilman Slusewicz. These are absolutely beautiful. Very nice work. Appreciate your work on that. I am concerned about the rust, and rather than just finding out, that's a confirmation I would want to have before we did any development of these signs. And I mean, even the one, the entrance monument where you have the shrubs in front of the bottom of the sign, if there's overflow, if we have a heavy rainstorm, the stones will get stained. So we don't want any rust bleeding. So that is something definitely we do want to find out. And I don't know if the stones would have any type of protective coating on them that would easily be washed off. But if there is rust bleed, these could look pretty bad pretty quickly, and we don't want that to be happening. I like the idea of the colored logo. I mean, and that goes with the street signs that everyone loves in the city. Plus, you can see the details. Our city logo tells the early history of our city, and you can see that in the colored one. And the ones that don't have the differentiation of the different colors, you can't tell. It looks like a blob. You can't tell what it is. So I do like the colored logo, and I do like the colored on the back also, just so that you can see what the different items are. My concern with the city seal where it's etched out is if rust starts filling in those spots, and then it doesn't look good. So, and I do have a question though on the Aliso Creek median, and I hope that we move that up pretty quick. I pass by that corner several times a day, and
I don't know if affectionately is the right term, but
The late
call it the
councilman.
ugliest corner in Laguna Niguel. So that really needs to be taken care of because that is an entrance into our city. And with that, we might have, I know years ago, Chappelle and Norland had some developer agreement funds that were deposited. They were originally deposited with the county, and then they came back to the city. So that's something that staff may want to follow up on to see if we do, have those funds, and maybe that'll move that up a little bit faster. But I know that's something, even when Linda Lindholm was on city council, she was talking about that corner, with that, that green utility box out there, and so we do need to take care of that. But I'm just concerned about the rust, so I want to make sure it's not going to bleed on the stones. And then I'm looking at the map of where these will be placed, and when it was brought up by Councilman Jennings, and I'm looking like even right by City Hall, between Niguel Road and Hillhurst, there's 4. I guess we'd need to do a rolling tour of the city, maybe just to get a better idea of how these are going to be placed. But it just seemed, because these are so pretty, we want to spread the beauty throughout the city. So, and also if you could give us an idea of what each one costs. So maybe that's something we phase in over time if we wanted to add these in other places throughout the city. But I think it's beautiful, but I like the colored logo on both sides, just because ask any 3rd grader in our city, they know the history of our city through our city seal, and ask anyone who's been to Junior Civic Workshop, they can tell you the history of the city through the city seal. So we want to enforce that.
Very good, thank you. I mean, as Councilmember Jerry Schlusser would mention that these are the final refinements of all the discussions, thoughts, or presentations that, 2 different consultants have made to the city. And initially, we were not happy with the first round, which was, I guess, a year ago or so. And then the city hired a different consultant, a different designer. And in my opinion, as you all concur, this is the best that we can get for our beautiful city, and it's going to make our city more beautiful. So I think we have 100% consensus that everyone want to go with the colored logo.
I believe Ms. Genoway wanted the color on both sides, though, correct?
She mentioned on both. The first thing is with the colored logo.
Yes.
Everybody wants the colored logo.
Yes.
Okay, and then to have it on both or on one side is up for discussions. Would you prefer on both or on one side? I start with.
I like it on both sides, and again, but I thought that we could go with the one single monocolor on the backside. That's as you're leaving, we're thinking, come back soon or whatever. I was just kidding, but so it's just to have something as people drive out of town. If you look at the monument signs now, there's nothing on the back. It's just this big white monument. So that's where we came up with just a little bit of a different design, just to show that we're leaving Laguna Niguel. It's almost looks sad or gray because it's not our pretty color blue.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but you want to consider as you're driving.
Welcoming when you come in to
Yeah,
see
but I'm
them.
saying when you're driving, you're not going to be looking at it like on a piece of paper like we are now. So is it going to look like the city seal as we're leaving, or is it going to look like a metal circle?
My thought was that because the 2 difference between option A and the metal cut on the back here is, if you look at it, especially on the large scale here, this is the distinctions stand out quite a bit better on the metal cut than they do on just the I don't know if it's brass or whatever it was, but the metal plate that was on the front. I thought differentiating, because I like that. I thought it was clever. I mean, if I had a fireplace that looked like that, I'd want something like that over it. But I thought it was different, and we can overuse our city seal sometimes because we have them. If we're going to vote color on the front hand side, that's fairly well plastered. It's hard to miss, and so when you come the other way, you get a different treatment. You get a little something else, and it's a very classic look. commend the designers and the people who picked it. So I like it.
All right.
I vote that one.
Councilwoman Laurie Davies, last but not least.
You know, they're all beautiful. I mean, you can't go wrong. It's, you know, it's a blessing that we actually have the opportunity to do this. But you know what, you know what, I concur on I like the change. You know, it's a little bit of something on both sides. So I would go with, going with more the non-color in the back. I'm sorry.
All right. Do I have a unanimous vote on that?
Yes, sir, can I make a motion?
Please, you were in the committee, please go ahead.
I would make the motion that the city council approve design option B on the front. Hopefully somebody check that and make sure I have that right, the colored
The
option.
colored version.
And option A on the back, which is the monocolor of the entry monument sign and decorative elements.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, the cutout,
Right.
single color.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The engineering services.
And again, that's all with direction from every member of council to make sure
Right.
that the rust elements and the capture and all the leakage and all those type of things are also covered. And then what's happening is we're just authorizing you to go seek bids. You're gonna come back and then tell us how much this all costs.
Right, and I will come back even with the corner monument, so you'll see everything before.
And the corner monuments would be for the ugliest corner in the city.
That's for the corner of Aliso Creek and
Alicia
and
Parkway.
Alicia Parkway.
Should we discuss that right now? Do we really wanna do that, right now for that
Because
corner? Or do we wanna discuss the corner at a later
Actually,
date? Which
Councilmember
corner it is?
Gary Schlusser, because I took the initiative to bring it to the council rather than to leave it there with the ad hoc committee. I thought with the time constraints that all of us have, this would be the best forum to openly discuss it so we can get everyone's inputs. I think for 5 minutes, we can do that.
Well, either now or at the next meeting. That's all I was asking. Do we do it today or do we do it at another meeting? Which corner?
We're talking about the southeast corner. Southeast
Ugly
corner.
side, don't worry about that.
Alicia.
There's only one side.
That's
one corner,
correct.
So you can't miss it. That's number one location. And number two location happens to be the first time that we had our meetings. As you recall, it was opposite of Costco. at
Crown Valley at
Parkway.
Cabot.
When
That's
you
where
come
the
in-
sculpture was going at the time.
Exactly, a monument, but because it was $750,000, we decided not to move in that direction, to use taxpayers' money, more effectively and more efficiently. So that was the
correct.
main reason that we drew that option.
That's
But it's
correct.
not out of the table.
On hold.
If the consultant can come up with a different version that we can economize, then it would be a monumental sign. You go to Mission Viejo, they have that. You go to Lake Forest, they have that. You go to Laguna Hills when you come in, you get off the freeway on Alicia Parkway. All of them have it except us. So I think that would be a very nice one. Any other comments?
About the location of that sign?
Yes.
Yeah, if we're gonna talk about it for a second, first of all, I did the math in my head, and I'm pretty sure I'm outside of 500 feet when I'm talking about Alicia Parkway and Aliso Creek. For some reason, all the development in town seems to be right around 600 feet away from my house. I think that if I was prioritizing, and I would prioritize the Alicia and Aliso Parkway, one of the reasons is because we don't yet know exactly what the end part of the gateway is going to look like. And so whatever sort of the look and feel ends up being after that's all in down there, I think that would be better time maybe to look at that. And if engineering services manager can bring that back to us at the same time, then great. And if we have to reconsider it, that's good too. But my priority, if we're going to do one, I do that one, and I got to give an extra thank you to the both of you for canning a $750,000 monument. That would have not gone well, I suspect. So good job.
That, and also I wanted to ask the engineering services manager to also at the same juncture, when you bring it back, you come up with a list of all other major arterials within the city, Niguel Road, Alicia Parkway. I can go on and on and on. Because I know Crown Valley is the number one, parkway in our city because of the ADT, average daily traffic, and it connects, a lot of cities. But you come back with a plan, with a map, and you itemize how many we're gonna need and what would be the corresponding cost, so that I think we can beautify the city in a much larger scale. So with that, I think we're done with all these items. So it's almost 9:50. We go to other businesses and council reports. I start with Councilmember Jay Schlusowitz with any reports that you may have.
All I'd like to say is that it took about 10 days to contact me, 14 days to meet, till we finally had a first meeting regarding the settlement. And, you know, disappointed but cautiously optimistic that Terry's recusal from the investigation and settlement discussion won't hinder the ability, you know, at all to reach an agreement of a shared goal of saving the taxpayers over $110,000 here in Laguna Niguel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lori Davies.
Well, I was going to make comments on the trip to DC, but I think I covered that quite a bit. Just a couple notes, and I think this is just beneficial for all of us as council members. In regards to our policy in the council decorum, just a couple items I think that we all need to keep in mind when we're up here. And I think I'm just going to, you know, you can go through all of them, but just a few. And one is to show respect for fellow council members, the community at large, staff, speakers, the press, and legislative process. Do not publicly ridicule others, but rather share any criticisms with the city manager or city attorney privately. And we talked about the 5. When on the dais, refer to fellow council members by title and last name and title. And I think it's good for all of us just to read this. It was good for me to go over this again. And I think just another good reminder under media relations, the mayor is designated a representative of the city council to speak to the media on official business, city business. Individual council members contacted by the media should defer to the mayor unless otherwise agreed upon in advance of speaking to the media. All comments made to the media shall clearly represent the actions by the majority of the council as an official city position. Communications with the media it's a vital function of the local government in order to help you know, the information of city business programs and services to public in a timely manner. Because the city council functions as one body, it is important that council members represent the city's official position to ensure accurate city communication. The following shall apply, and those are the items. So just a reminder for myself, and I think the council, just to go over this. You know, I think it's always good to be reminded. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember John Mark Jennings.
Thank you, very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to change pace for just a second. It's been an incredibly difficult week. There's been great tragedy, and I think tonight I am feeling what perhaps we all might be feeling, which is some sense of desperation. And that desperation is wanting to do something for so many different groups around the country, but knowing not exactly just where to start. When tragedy strikes our neighbors, or even complete strangers for that matter, some built-in moral compass inside us directs us to this action. And the question is really, where do we begin? And we are a society of diverse people who care about others. And when catastrophes like this strike, we feel ourselves drawn closer into some shared human condition that we all seem to be able to relate to. We are bound together in so many different ways, and it's those ties that always seem to emerge from these crises that we face to remind us of our more basic beliefs. And today, right now, I believe our best efforts must be focused on strengthening those ties, to follow the better angels of our souls, to forgive, to nurture, to focus on what is right, what is true, and what is absolute. And the divisiveness and anger and aggression we see in society are far too pervasive in our lives. And the depravity of the trouble can only be met with the resilience of the brave and of the committed. When we might otherwise be too focused on the controversies that divide us, we are still neighbors who must focus on what unites us. And we are a city of nation and of friends. Some of those friends are long in the making, and those are simply waiting to be formed through some shared experience. And I humbly suggest that now may be a good time to foster those friendships, to reach out to our neighbors, to welcome those who we might not yet have turned those strangers into friends. We are together duty-bound to follow the most basic tenets of our society, which are the pursuits of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those words have never been more true than they are this week. My hope and prayers are with each of you, both new friends and old friends. And I adjourn my comments tonight in the memories of those who so very tragically and needlessly lost their lives, and from those whom life has been taken in a meaningful way, and to those who've been injured in body and mind, and most importantly, to our first responders and to our heroes of every kind who were there and did such an amazing job. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude, and I thank you for that. And with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start off with thank you to Chief Barr and Fire Chief Adams. And please let those who you work with know that they have our sincere appreciation for what they do. We know, and as we have seen, this past week, that first responders are first responders always, not just when they're on the clock and not just when they're in their own city. So we do send to those that you work with our sincere gratitude for all that they do, and for even just answering the call to be a deputy or to be a firefighter. Because without them, then we lose the fabric of our society. So thank you. This week I've had many different meetings. I'll just give you some of the highlights. Last Thursday, September 21st, was the Human Trafficking Town Hall. This was our second town hall that our city has hosted. We had about 300 attendees at this town hall, people coming to learn about human trafficking and what it is. And the focus of this one was, how do we protect our children and prevent them from being targeted by traffickers? Because Orange County is a destination for traffickers. Superintendent Vital joined the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force on the speaker panel. So people got a lot of good information, and we do have a lot of good people stepping forward and wanting to volunteer to do what they can. And so we'll be having a workshop here at City Hall at 7 p.m. on October 19th. And this is just to come to find out about the volunteer opportunities, either to volunteer with your skills, with your time, or for any holiday giving or sharing. So that's at City Hall on October 19th at 7 p.m. Our senior center had a fantastic senior expo on September 22nd. So a lot of the seniors in our city, found out about services that are available to them, merchants that are, available with the products that they need, and they got lots of good information. I was invited to attend the Mission Lutheran Church's 40th anniversary, so I congratulate all the congregants at that church for their 40th anniversary. That's spectacular for a faith community to be together for so long. On September 26th, I attended the Arts Committee. Barbara Foster, who is heading that up, was here. That is a group of residents who have just gotten together who would like to see an arts presence in our community. And at that meeting, after many months of meeting, we're finally able to come up with the mission statement, and that is to bring the experience of art in all its forms to the citizens of the Laguna Niguel. So if you're interested in any form of art and would like to work on this committee as we are developing what we're going to do and how we're going to accomplish it, please let me know, and I will be happy to have you join us. On the 27th, I attended the meeting of the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force. Senator Bates was there and talked about what is going on in Sacramento, and we here in our city had a big effort during the summer to correct Prop 57, and I'm looking forward to hearing some results. We should hear in a couple of weeks on if the governor has taken our input into consideration when he signs that into law. On the 28th, Councilmember Davies and I were at the ACCOC Legislative Committee meeting. And these are the bills that we're looking at. What are we going to support or oppose, and how do they affect local control?
And I'll tell you, there's some that we've been working on for years, and one is the one by the Quirk Silva bill to have the health department have an inspector here in Orange County instead of keeping them all in Sacramento. Well, we've been working on that for 2 years, and last year I know Senator Bates had a bill that if you were a court ordered to go to a rehabilitation home, that home had to be licensed. Makes sense. But that didn't even make it out of committee. So while there's things that are taking a lot of time in Sacramento, they did have time to name a state dinosaur. So I'm sure all third graders are happy. We now have a state dinosaur. And I can't even say this, August Nolophus Maurici. So we do have a state dinosaur. That took place in Sacramento. Last night was the opioid town hall hosted by Assemblyman Breaux and Senator Bates. And this was to bring information to parents about the opioid epidemic. And I was surprised to find out that it is more prevalent here in Orange County than in LA County or San Diego County. So there is a lot that we need to do on awareness because it just takes one time. We have to get our kids to say no from the very beginning. One time, you can become addicted. One time, you can die. It's the synthetic drugs that are being laced into other drugs that the kids are thinking they're getting. So that is something that we really do need to raise awareness on as well. This Thursday will be our youth committee meeting here, and that's just an exciting meeting. Councilman Jennings and I are the council liaisons to that, so I'm looking forward to getting some energy that night because we have some fantastic high school students who are on that to advise the city council on teen programming. And then also next Tuesday is our second junior civic workshop of this school year. So there we will have Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and Emergency Preparedness talking to the middle schoolers. So that's Tuesday at 6:30 here at City Hall, and you register online, lnteens.org. It's just 1 hour, but the kids come away learning a lot. And that's all for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I want to keep it brief to the point. It's almost 10 o'clock. On September 21st, I attended the 7th annual of Orange County Taxpayers Association Awards reception in Newport Beach. This is the organization that does advocate for all of us taxpayers. They present awards to the people, specifically to those elected officials, and those organizations that happen to be advocating for the taxpayers at the same time. They mention those elected officials or those individuals or those organizations that basically do the opposite. So I think it's a very good occasion to get to know, which individuals or organizations are working very hard for all of us as the taxpayers. On September 25th, I met with No Plain Noise Coalition right here at the City Hall, and it was a very productive meeting that I had with them, and I'm very pleased that all of us, the entire group, that they are pretty unified, they are pretty organized. We happen to be on the same page. The coalition has over 70 members that they do a lot of things, and I was able to provide them with specific technical insights on how to go about it, because our city, unlike the other two cities, city of Laguna Beach and city of Newport Beach, we have not filed a lawsuit against Federal Aviation Administration with regard to the flight, path that has been modified, because now the government, FAA, is using a GPS-based system versus the manual system that they've had, because the U.S. Congress acted, I think it was back in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, that the laws were changed to automate it, but the potential negative impact of the proposed action plan that is in works is that we have residents, we have some areas of the city that the residents are echoing that they don't feel comfortable with that. And I told them that all of us in the city council, we have passed resolution that we are against it, and we are waiting for, there is a, not litigation, but they are going through a second phase of their procedures. I'm talking about City of Laguna Beach, that we want to hear about the outcome of those legal discussions, and then we are going to be acting accordingly, obviously along our partners, which happens to be the County of Orange. On September 27th, I attended the joint meetings of the TCA's Finance and Investment Committee, and then later on that afternoon, I also attended TCA's joint meeting of the Toll Operations Committee at TCA's headquarters. On September 27th, that evening, I attended the City Traffic and Transportation Commission at the City Hall. On September 28th, Thursday, September 29th, Friday, I attended the Mobility 21 meetings in Anaheim on behalf of the Transportation Corridor Agency, as well as the City of Laguna Niguel. And on September 28th, in that evening, I attended the Laguna Niguel Chamber of Commerce's tailgate mixer, which was a very successful event with my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Elaine Genoway, and my colleague, Council Member Jerry Schlusewith, at Alan Cadillac's place. With that, I'm done with our comments. I start with Chief Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7 o'clock, is National Walk to School Day. Police services will be out at Marion Burgesson, Hidden Hills, and Laguna Niguel Elementary Schools. Laguna Niguel and Hidden Hills require no walking for council members. Marion Burgesson is walking optional. I will be meeting the parents and students over at Chick-fil-A, and we'll walk from there over to the school. So hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow morning.
I'm scheduled to be there at 7 a.m., and I presume that Councilwoman.
Are you buying breakfast?
No, I think Chick-fil-A is providing.
Chicken and biscuit.
Very good, thank you. Our interim assistant city manager, Debbie Bell.
Just a reminder that our next city council meeting is scheduled for this Friday morning, starting at 8:30 in the morning. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, please let me know. Thank you very much.
9 a.m.? I thought it was,
Well-
right, I thought it was 9.
As I did too, but actually the first interview begins at 9, and so from 8:30 to 9 would be getting all the questions set up and all the pre-interview instructions taken
Because
care
I'm
of.
going to go to the government affairs meeting, but I'm going to cut it short, so I'll be there at 8:30. Thank you for reminding us. Yes.
Well, unbeknownst to me, the candidates had already been notified when I was told that the meeting actually started at 8:30 rather than 9, because I had also been told that it was at 9. I am also planning to be at the government affairs meeting, and will be making the mad dash. I think it's my second meeting where I've had to leave early
right.
to go to yet another meeting. So it's fine. Everyone will be late then for the rest of the day, and there is only a 30-minute lunch break. So catching up in the middle of the day will be difficult. We are on schedule to end all the interviews by 3:30, with the final discussion being no longer than 30 minutes, so that the entire day can be ended by 4. So if we start the first interview late, we're going to have to make up time on the other interviews, or have a 5-minute lunch, which could be kind of rough.
We'll be there at 8:30.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Our interim city manager, Steve Erlinson.
Nothing to report tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Our city attorney, Mr. Terry Dixon.
Nothing to report tonight.
Our fire chief, Adams. You're welcome. Our community engagement manager, Kalina North. Our engineering services manager, Mr. Ziad Mazboudi.
Nothing to report, sir.
Our purchasing manager.
Nothing to report, sir. Thank you.
Very good. Our city clerk, Madam
Thank you,
Gomez.
Mayor. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to let you know that I will be out of the office the rest of the week, attending the Master Municipal Clerk Academy in Pomona.
We wish you all the best.
So,
and
thank
the
you
best of
very
luck.
much. I appreciate it. I worked for my first mayor actually when I was 16 years old. So 38 years as a public servant, and I'm finally going to be a master municipal clerk. I'm very, very excited. I used to run to work downtown City Hall, running downtown San Bernardino, running to the City Hall, and I ended up working for the assistant to the mayor, who was Mayor Holcomb at the time, and she became the first elected Latina city clerk in San Bernardino during that time. And she actually ran 6 times, 4-year terms, so she served 24 years, and I served half of them with her, so I am very proud of that. So thank you.
Very good. Our Parks and Rec Director, Allison Gibio.
Thank you, Mayor. We have our annual Fall Crafts Fair this Saturday, October 7th at Sea Country Center, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can come, it's free admission. Come support over 75 small businesses. 6th to 12th graders can register for a self-defense class on Friday, October 13th at 5 p.m. That's $5, and pre-registration is required by October 10th. We have a family fun night coming up. It's called Halloween Episode. It's a high-energy interactive children's musical. That's also on Friday, October 13th at 7 p.m. at Sea Country, and it's $5 per person. And last but not least, sponsorship. If you want to sponsor the holiday parade, the deadline to be in all the materials is next week, I believe on October 10th. I could have that date wrong, but it is next week. So you can go to the LagunaNiguelParade.com for more information about that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Our Community Development Director, Leslie Roseberry. Our Public Works Director, Nasser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of items. One, we have begun a Drive Safely educational campaign around town. You may recall that we did this last year in March. We received many positive comments. So we have the trailers and radar signs out there encouraging motorists to slow down and give give everyone a good chance to drive safely in town. So this campaign just started last week, and it'll continue through the end of this month. Also, we have paving contractors starting in the Marina Hills neighborhood. This is the residential areas around Park Vista. They'll start next week, and that project will probably last about 3 months. Thank you.
Very good. We are now adjourned at 10:14 p.m. and thank you and have a nice evening.